I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ridgewood Village Council, public workshop. Today's October 23rd, 2019. The time is 7:30 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same, as provided by law, but scheduled, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Knudsen.
Here.
Councilman Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Voigt.
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh is not present. Mayor Hache.
Here. Please stand for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving our nation's armed forces and its first responders. Thank you. We'll open up with public comments, not to exceed 3 minutes per person. Come on up. Should be a green light at the bottom at the stem.
You got to push the button.
Yep.
Okay, now it should be on. Yeah. Okay, Andrew Lowry, 441 Hawthorne Place in Ridgewood. I'm speaking on behalf of the Shade Tree Commission, and I have 3 little points to make, which are related but somewhat separate. I'm warning you that we are planning to make a series of comments and presentations over the next couple months to try to increase the priority that trees and tree canopy has in Ridgewood. This will be really informational, and we look forward to brief meetings and discussions about the subject. Second thing is that tonight I know they're going to be talking about village residents planting trees in the village, and we support that 100%, but we should recognize that that is not a solution to the issue. It's a part, it's a support, it's an embellishment, but it's not it can't be the primary position that we take. Third is that I know there's a presentation coming about age-friendly Ridgewood, and I'm very pleased that we've made improvements in the sidewalks, and there are a lot of other things going on. But I would say that in 10 years, there are not going to be many people 55 or older or even younger who are going to want to walk down Ridgewood Avenue in July and August at midday. We have to think about the future. Global warming is real, and the downtown is going to be exceptionally hot. It's already much hotter than the rest of the village. Finally, and I've just spoken with one of the council members about this, and Mike, who works on the council, on the Shade Committee, is aware of it. But we've been reaching out to the developers to try to make sure that they use the best practices in developing their sidewalk plans. And I have emailed, called, sent articles, done everything that I know how to do to get their attention, and I've gotten 0 response. Okay, so Chris told me, lots of luck, and I understand that. They have an approved plan, but the problem is the sidewalks are going to get poured pretty soon. So anything that you can do as a council to, insert a little pressure, I think for a small amount of money, you will get a huge payoff long term in what the street looks like and what basically what their buildings are going to look like. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you.
I'd just like to note for the record that Councilwoman Walsh is present.
Hello, everyone. Nancy Brennan Hill, and I came to say a few more words about trees. And I agree with everything that the gentleman ahead of me said, but I just want to tell you how much these trees mean to me. I go to my back window at night and I look out, and the sky's blue and purple and yellow with the trees against the horizon. It's gorgeous. In the morning, I sit on the porch and drink tea and look at the street. more gorgeous. I grab my green cart with the wheels on it and walk uptown, go to Whole Foods, walk around. It's beautiful. On the way up there, there are big trees with big knots in them. They're sycamore. They're just beautiful. And we've got to really do something to sustain this beauty in Ridgewood. And the only thing I can think of is that we need a dedicated tree person. We need somebody who loves Ridgewood, who loves the trees, who has a passion for keeping all of this going. There are lovely volunteers. They want to do things, but they need somebody to organize it, to keep it going. So we need a chunk of money, because you can keep talking and keep meeting and keep doing everything. And if there's no money behind it and no person in charge, it just comes to nothing. So I'm asking you to put not just some money to say that you did it, but really put something in there and get the right person so that we can keep this all going. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am? Excuse me, would you make sure that you give your name and address, please? Thank you.
Me?
Everyone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John Whitmack, 480 Upper Boulevard. The reason I'm here is adjacent to my property is a paper street. I think everybody knows what a paper street is. I'm interested in purchasing the paper street from the town. I'm here upon the advice of Matt Rogers to formally make that inquiry and to see if we can get that going. I know it's happened in the past. My neighbor has purchased his section of it, albeit it was a long time ago, but it's an unused piece of property right now that the town is maintaining, and I would like to buy it. So that is my formal announcement. Right. I don't know if there's anything else I need to do other than just make that announcement and then have it go from there.
Yep.
I have copies of my survey. Is anybody interested?
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's okay.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Saurabh Dani, 390 Bedford Road, Ridgewood. I'm here for two comments. One is related to the trees, what Nancy just mentioned and the previous gentleman mentioned. So if you guys do decide to go with any volunteer effort, I'm willing to volunteer, and I know several other residents who are willing to volunteer. So you guys guide us, and we'll do the labor. The second point is on the library. On the library, I met and I interacted with several trustees in last 2-3 weeks or a couple of months, and those interactions were really good. And I think some of the trustees, I really developed some respect, and they are good listeners and problem solvers. And at the same time, since today both all the council members are here and the trustees are here, I want to ask that we all know there are a couple of trustees, or at least one, I can't take the name, but who has not been a good neighbor or who has not performed as a good trustee. So I think the trustees and the council should ask for resignations. So you can appoint people, but I think when the time comes, you should be able to ask for resignations. If you are not doing that, the trustee should ask, or the person should himself resign. And on the second part of that, there are some residents who are not trustees on the library, but who have done a lot of research, who have gone through all the 250 pages of survey results, which library did not, and have invested a lot of time in the design review. So maybe there should be some way to get their input. So residents who are interested, their input should be considered during this design and build process, and trustees who are not behaving as trustees should be requested to resign. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Steve Kim, 291 Highland. The Ridgewood Library's proposed $7.6 million renovation doesn't help the library expand its services by much. The reimagined Ridgewood Library will have less usable space, floor space, because of the enlarged staircase. The teen center will be a fraction of the staff space situated right next to it. The kids' area will not expand. The book collection will merely be the same. And it should be about the books, right? ESL will not expand from the current 125 students because space isn't what's constraining that program. So, what is the benefit of spending $7.6 million and living through 18 months of disruption and agony? Yes, we should update and perhaps reconfigure the library, but let's not gut it just for the sake of cutting it. Let's not put a hole through the floor for light and thereby messing up flow of a good building. We should look for a solution that derives the most user value rather than what consumes the most dollar value. With regards to the library's matching grant, I ask everyone to read the Act regulation carefully because it sure doesn't sound like we would be first in line for that money, and it's highly contested. When we apply, we should be straightforward about facts. Sure, I like getting grant money as much as the next person, but we should do it the right way. So here is an excerpt from the regulator. There was a survey. In order to get a glimpse of the immediate need, on May 1st, 2019, the State Library distributed a quick turnaround survey which closed May 17th. The survey identified over 170 projects totaling over $370 million. We recognize that ultimately the number will be significantly higher, but this at least provides some estimate of upcoming workload. Just as a reminder, there's $125 million available. So I think we should put that into consideration. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judith Driver at 133 Godwin Avenue. I originally came here to support trees, shade trees in the village, but I think I concur with everything that has been said beforehand, so I'm going to change mine. I would like to request that the sign, there's an electronic board which has Village of Ridgewood business at the train station, and it's a very, it bears one message, and it stays on for about 30 seconds and then disappears. I'd like to request that at least once a minute that they put the time of day on that. I find it very useful to have an idea what time it is. And there's only 2 clocks that I know that ever correct in Ridgewood. And my phone is always in my bag or somewhere that I can't see. So that I would think that's a programming thing that could be done very easily and could be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and all the council people. Good evening. Good to see everyone. I just wanted to come by.
Name and address.
Reverend Lemuel Brown, 399 South Broad Street. Okay. I just wanted to come by this evening and just make more of a statement. Approximately a week and a half ago, I had the very esteemed honor to go down to Falls Church, Virginia, to visit the Kensington Corporation, the Senior Assisted Living Program. I was contacted by them, and I went down to see the facility. Falls Church is a town very similar to that of Ridgewood. While down there, I had the opportunity to meet the principals and the staff, and what a fine facility the Kensington Corporation Senior Assisted Living Program is. We had lunch, took me through the place. It was very well put together. We also took a ride through the town and realized that the town was very similar to that of Ridgewood. $1 million homes. The mayor reminded me of Mayor Hache. He was, every time I ride down Ridgewood Avenue, I can see Mayor Hache walking down the street. And we ran into the mayor walking down the street there in Falls Church. And I also had the opportunity to meet one of the councilmen there as well regarding the Kensington Corporation. And so I was very much impressed on the Senior Assisted Living Program, not only how it's set up, it's arranged, the parking. It was just a phenomenal place. And I took one step further this past, just 2 days ago, I went to another facility of theirs on my own in Westchester County, because that's where I'm really originally from in New York. And I went to their facility in White Plains and had an opportunity to tour it there as well, well put together. My reasoning for coming out tonight was to share that with you, and I really believe that the Kensington Corporation, with the desires that they have here in Ridgewood, would be an asset. I'm never one to speak on something that I don't really believe in, or I believe in something that I will never stand for something I don't believe in. But after looking at it and visiting it and seeing it, I was very much impressed and very excited, and also speaking with the councilmen down in that area. So tonight I just wanted to come by and share with the council. I understand they were here and they presented, but I only wanted to give you my end of it, because I believe that the Kensington Corporation will provide so much.
Thank you.
And my 3 minutes?
Yeah, so
Okay.
but we have 5 more minutes at the end of the meeting if you want to wait. You can
Okay.
come back again.
All right. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That's the reverend in me.
Amen. Nobody else? So we'll close public comments. Just for the gentleman, Mr. Whitmack, so you're already in communications with Matt Rogers. Thank you for sharing this, and thank you for having your case put into the record. And we'll follow up with Matt on what are the next steps, and we'll be in contact with you regarding that. Okay? Thank you. And with that, we will go to manager's report.
Okay. I want to remind everyone Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. The polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's contests for General Assembly and freeholders. The upcoming Village Council meetings for the rest of this year are November 6th for a work session, November 13th is a public meeting, December 4th is a work session, and then December 11th is our last public meeting of the year. The Water Department hydrant flushing began October 20th, and those customers who signed up for Swift Reach Reverse 911 received an advance call regarding this maintenance project. Hydrant flushing is an essential part of the water system maintenance program that helps Ridgewood Water provide quality water service. In order to cleanse the system, we have to systemically open the fire hydrants to increase water flows. This allows us to flush any minerals and deposits from the pipes that may have accumulated. While flushing the system, we will not interrupt water service to residents. When the crews are working in your area, you may notice a temporary drop in water pressure or discolored water. This is normal. If this happens, simply let your water run until it is clear. There are no health concerns associated with the minerals that get stirred up, but residents are urged to avoid doing laundry while crews are working. If you have any questions about routes, maps, or schedules, you can contact Neil Gallone in our water department. The Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring Halloween in the park with their annual Haunted Harvest Event Saturday, October 26th, with a rain date of October 27th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. Gather in the park to pick up a map of participating businesses. There will be a hay maze, pumpkin patch, a Halloween parade for children at 12 noon, and a pet parade at 1 p.m. Come have fun and meet the Good Witch. Ridgewood Recreation, there will be children's programs scheduled for the Teachers Convention recess on November 7th. There will be a live animal show and Lego Minecraft engineering for grades K through 2 and 3 to 5. Additional information can be found from our Recreation Department. The Bergen County Utilities Authority sponsors free recycling events throughout the year. The last household hazardous waste collection will take place on Saturday, November 16th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Bergen County Utilities Authority, which is the foot of Empire Boulevard in Moonachie. Items that will be collected are aerosol cans, fluorescent light bulbs, paints and varnishes, propane gas cylinders. This event is rain or shine, and you do need proof of Bergen County residency. Finally, our farmers market, I just want to remind everyone, will remain open through November 24th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Ridgewood train station. This is every Sunday up till the 24th. Come meet the farmers, and there are also pumpkins, as well as homemade jams, Bella Mozzarella, Made Fresh, Picklicious, and Bounty Bakers. Thanks.
All right, thank you. We'll go to council reports. We'll switch it up today. We'll start the other way. We'll start with Councilman Voigt.
Thank you, Mayor. So the Citizens Safety Advisory Committee met on October 17th. There were discussions about the Franklin Avenue corridor and the work that the village and Bergen County are doing related to that. There are design drawings in the works. They met the week of October 7th. The county will do plans for each intersection along that corridor, which includes Maple and East Ridgewood intersection, Maple and Franklin, Franklin and Oak, and Franklin and Broad. The county, from my understanding, is committed to paying for the basics of the intersections, poles and lights and concrete, and if we want to make it more decorative, it will cost the village additionally. The idea as well is to create bump outs to make the crosswalk shorter at each of the intersections. There may be some land taking, especially at the Maple-Franklin intersection, so that may create some issues. And the goal is to continue to communicate with Bergen County, and it's the village's intention to continue to engage with Bergen County to ensure we maintain our spot on the hierarchy of priorities. So that will be an active, ongoing activity. CBDAC mentioned that they're looking at potential measures to upgrade the lighting at busy intersections. That was mentioned at the meeting. The flashing speed sign, which is to be placed on North Walnut, arrived yesterday. The plan is to install that by the end of next week. It will be mid-street between Linwood and Franklin. The sidewalk extension plan on West Glen is to be reinitiated next spring, and it'll occur from Hillcrest to Heights. Just the Sierra Club and the League of Women Voters met last week. There was several of us that were there. A gentleman named Jeff Tittle, who is with the Sierra Club, talked about global warming, which is the biggest issue. And it's going to, in the next 15 to 20 years, there are concerns about the meadowlands actually flooding. And we asked him what we could do as it relates to ensuring that we do our job in Bergen County. His number one priority, said, is plant as many trees as possible. So, anyways, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mayor. Heather mentioned Halloween in the Park for Chamber of Commerce, and then obviously you see all of the library members ready to do their presentations, so I will let them, when they come up, give an update on the library. That's all I have.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Great, thank you. Planning Board met October 15th, I believe it was, for a number of reviews of ordinances that the Village Council had sent back to the Planning Board, which was the signed descending letters, which we've all gone through again and again, the bright and brilliant colors, which is currently in the code and we've determined is some vague language. We also worked on the garage issue, the driveway, and that's going to be kicked back as it was written. And I think that the planner, Mary Ann Bucci-Carter, did state that it achieves the goals and objectives we're looking to achieve based on that lot coverage and improvement coverage. We also discussed the request, I think, by Steel Wheel for those outdoor vestibules.
Vestibule.
And Mary Ann Bucci-Carter is going to prepare a draft ordinance for us to review. I thought it would have been ready for today, but probably our next work session. So we'll try to get that rolling as quickly as possible. And then we heard a preliminary and final major subdivision application for 232-250 North Maple Avenue, which is drawn a lot of interest, garnered a tremendous amount of interest from residents. The meeting was well attended, and that application testimony was from the engineer, but that was going to be carried to January 7th, 2020. And so we're in 2020. January 7th, 2020, mark your calendars. That application has been carried. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. Seeing Mr. Donnie in the crowd, I'd just like to reminded me that we were invited to the Diwali Festival over the weekend, which was really exciting. It was great fun, great food, a lot of great people. The mayor and deputy mayor were there. The mayor was dressed much better than I was, or more appropriately than I was, and it was, we had a lot of fun. So thank you to the Ridgewood Indian community and everyone for sponsoring that and putting the event together. On October 15th, it was a pretty busy night here in Village Hall, at least for myself. The Green Ridgewood met, the Green Team met, and the Shade Tree Commission met all at the same time, so I was kind of downstairs and running upstairs. But Green Ridgewood, from what I caught at the meeting, was we are revamping the Green Business Recognition Program, where volunteers have been going out to the community to try and get more food, more restaurants and more retail people involved. We're also kind of double dipping because we're exploring the possibility of recycling food waste. So to get into the restaurant owners and kind of talk to them about this program and then ask them what they do with their food waste is it's interesting. It's a good way to collect some information so that we could try and roll this program out in the future. Right now the infrastructure isn't really there in Bergen County, but if we stay on top of it and ahead of things, then once the infrastructure is in place or it begins to get put in place, perhaps it's a program that could help us on recycling food and reducing our tipping fees for our garbage and just generally helping the environment. The plastic bag ban, the education is being rolled out and things are finalized, so we'll start seeing people around handing out reusable bags and bookmarks. We didn't want to do a lot of literature because, again, to save trees and use less paper and create less waste, so stay tuned. The Shade Tree Commission, our chair, Andrew Lowry, was here. He spoke about a lot of things that were going on there. So, one thing that we thought with the developments downtown is, again, the sidewalks aren't even in place yet. So if they're going to plant trees, which it looked like they were going to do on their plans, then they should do it the right way, and it'll help the village, it'll help the downtown, and even help their projects because the trees will survive. They'll shade the fronts of their properties, and it'll just make it look nicer. One of the other things that came up was we are in the third year, I believe, of our 5-year plan, and it's critically important to get the tree survey accomplished for a number of reasons, because this would be a baseline for us to find out exactly how many trees we do have on the streets in the village of Ridgewood. So right now we're guessing here 15,000, 12,000, but there's really no formal count that's been done. And again, this will tell you the condition of the tree, the species, where it's located, and it'll also help us to apply for larger grants from the State Shade Tree Federation, which could be close to $300,000. So having this in place would be key to moving forward and getting a lot of trees planted in the village of Ridgewood. It seems to be a hot topic these days. A lot of people are talking about it. And then the nursery committee, which Ms. Driver and Brennan Hill are a part of, we've discussed several ideas. Resident planting came out of that, and we're going to talk about that a little bit down in the agenda. So we'll hold off on that. And I think that was it. If I missed anything, I'll come back. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have to report on a few grand openings. We had on the 17th of October, we had grand opening of Flora's Cottage on 7 North Broad Street. The deputy mayor was there. It's downstairs. It's a wonderful space. It's a space on one side is facials, and on the other side, there are different, over 17 organic brands of different skincare products. It was a really, really beautiful space. I was very excited for her.
It is beautiful. Just go visit because it's beautiful. The space is gorgeous.
And the owner, Eva, is absolutely lovely, so please stop by and say hello. We also had a grand opening on Monday, 38 Oak Street, Northeast Laser Vein Institute on 38 Oak Street, the site of the old post office next to Park West Tavern. Deputy Mayor and Councilman Voigt were there as well. Very excited to have them. Beautiful facility. They also do some cosmetic work as well, including blemish removal, fat reduction, and which I'm interested in. That's a good one.
But you don't lose weight.
But you don't lose weight. It's sculpting. It's sculpting. But again, very excited to have them. I'll touch briefly on the Diwali celebration. Again, it was a great, wonderful celebration. The outfit that Councilman Seaton was referring to was a kurta, I believe, which I borrowed, and I have to tell you, it was the most comfortable outfit I've ever worn in my life. It was unbelievable. I think I might have to rethink my wardrobe choices. And last but not least, we had last Friday the Blue Star dinner in the community center and Lady Mount Carmel. And Councilman Walsh was there. It was a really wonderful event. Our very own Commander Paoli with Post 53 of the American Legion again held a wonderful ceremony in honor of those families who have sons and daughters serving in our nation's armed forces. And they were happy to report that we have 4 new families that joined the group this year. And it was wonderful. Heard some really good and heartfelt commentary from the families, and they share their experiences in being military families. And there was one in particular, was an 11-year-old girl whose dad has been deployed, and she was just talking about how much she misses them and how much the family supports what he does and how proud they are of him. So it was a really wonderful event, and I suggest that if you haven't attended one in the past, that you get to do so. That's all I have.
Okay, our first presentation this evening is from Age Friendly Ridgewood, a survey that they did of older residents. So I'll invite Beth Abbott, Sheila Brogan, and Sue Ulrich to come up.
Hi, I'm Beth Abbott, 174 Union Street. Do you want to give your...
Sheila Brogan, 302 Kensington Drive.
So we appreciate this chance to talk to you tonight. Tonight we'll present results, some results from our recent survey of Ridgewood residents 55 and older. And since the 55 and older group is a quarter of our population, we think this is really useful information for you and for us. Just to refresh your memory, we started Age Friendly Ridgewood back in 2015 with another survey of the older population. We designed our questions around AARP's 8 livable community domains. So we decided to do a follow-up survey this year. In both cases, we used SurveyMonkey to do the survey online and also had printed copies that we distributed around town. Also, in both cases, we hired a neutral third-party research firm to clean the data and analyze the results. This time, they also helped us with the questions to make sure they were clear and valuable. The first survey had more questions, and we kept it open longer. This time, we had advice from the research firm that 360 would be a credible number of responses. We had 384. We tried hard to publicize the survey with all the usual suspects and also get to people that we have not reached before. So why did we conduct another survey? We wanted to take a deeper dive into some of the areas, such as the transportation services. We asked some different questions. For instance, we asked about rideshare service use. We wanted to ask about pedestrian safety, since there's been improvements, and see what people feel about that. We asked some of the questions in more detailed ways. For instance, in housing, we asked specifically what type of housing would make it easier for folks to stay in Ridgewood as they get older. We asked some questions in different ways. For instance, in the first survey, we asked if people needed help with maintenance in their homes, and this time we asked specifically about snow and leaves and other things. We asked more detail about how people get and want to get information, and also for specific questions about speaker events. Finally, we asked how age-friendly Ridgewood is doing. Knowing this will help us plan our future events and outreach. And to be brutally honest, our grant funder wants to know that too. We also asked for suggestions on what else we can do for this community. So Sheila's going to go further into the subject areas, but I want to mention that the document that the research firm created for us that you have, and also another document with all the questions and all the statistics, are already posted on our Age-Friendly website under the Surveys tab on the home page. And the old surveys there, as well as this data. This is some of the demographics of who responded to this survey. And these are pretty similar to who responded to our original survey. So now I'd like to turn it over to Sheila.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us present tonight. So just to give you some information about some of the survey, initially, in our initial survey, we asked questions about housing. And the response really from the over 700 people that answered our question were they wanted us, or not us, but the village to look at developing housing options for seniors. One, that are affordable, but even more than affordable, that they are smaller in scale and different options. So we wanted to take that a little further. So on the next slide, you already did it. On our follow-up survey, we asked respondents, what would make it easier to stay in Ridgewood? And I'm not downsizing the importance of affordable housing and, of course, the concerns about high property taxes. But residents said it would be easier, and you can see a couple of the options, condos, townhouses, low-income subsidized housing, and then rental. We asked, and in just on the housing, we also hear from our residents there is a desire to stay in Ridgewood and to stay in your own home. So to address some of that, I put on the dais today. We're having a program next Tuesday at the library on aging in place, and you can see the speakers that we're having to explore what kinds of services are out there in the county and locally to help people stay in their homes comfortably. So that is one response. And another response, we're very happy that the county has put together, and you'll see this also in your packet, a guide to home improvement services. And I know we gave one to Heather at a meeting. So we are trying to address making sure that information and resources are available for older adults. As Beth mentioned, we did ask about leaf raking and snow shoveling, which is daunting for some in our community. And for that, we've been looking at a subscription service called Umbrella, who say for a pretty lower cost that they may be able to do that. There'll be some information on that program at our housing forum next Tuesday as well. The next is we talked about transportation. Initially, our residents talked to us about transportation in our initial survey to offer services later and point-to-point service, and on pedestrian safety to improve some safety, street lighting, and sidewalk repairs. On our follow-up survey, 45%, is that it? Oh, did I miss one? Excuse me. On our follow-up survey on transportation, only 6% of the respondents are using our senior bus. And so we view this as a challenge for us to make sure that our older adults are aware of this service and this option. We're so pleased that the village purchased a new bus because the old bus was breaking down, so thank you so much for that. So in order to create awareness, we've had some specialty bus rides. I know some of you are very much aware of that. Earlier this month, Nancy Bigos was our partner in that, and we had the bus take a look at our park systems and visit some of our parks with older adults who don't normally ride the bus, so that was great. We've created a brochure with Ridgewood's options, both the bus and the coupon program, giving our residents a number of options for using, and that's been very well received. And we are exploring the idea of doing a video next spring on the bus and the coupon service, again to raise awareness of this opportunity for people who are saying, well, maybe I'm still driving, but I really don't like to drive to the doctor's office, or I really don't like parking in a busy parking lot, and it would be easier to do that. So 34% of our respondents had never used a ride share, and that was interesting. We sort of delved into why, and it's don't know how it works, safety, no smartphone, that kind of thing was impediments to using that. On pedestrian safety, 45% of our respondents thought that the Central Business District was still unsafe or very unsafe for pedestrians, and they had a number of suggestions, and we've listed them there. Worth noting is that many respondents identified Franklin Avenue and Ridgewood Avenue as particularly unsafe for pedestrians, and so we are really grateful of you pushing ahead with the county and having that partnership to improve Franklin Avenue. So thank you so much for that. That's great. On communications, really, where do people get their information? Look at you. You're top of the guide there, Village e-notices. And for that, you might look at, are there other opportunities or more frequent opportunities to get that information out? I'd also like to say the public library is another area when they do their e-notices out to communicate. And we've got some work to do because we're at the bottom of the list. So we're still building our email list. Communication, so how would you like to receive information was our next question. And you'll see that for age-friendly, they would like to receive it from some of our sources. But again, Village's e-notices and public library are the two ones that follow there. So that is really significant as the newspaper is not so robust in the information offered. This is a great opportunity for us to look at that. And then we asked about our speaker series. We've had some luck, and we are very grateful to the Ridgewood Library because they've been a fabulous partner for us, as has the community center, in allowing speakers in on aging issues. So you can see the list of things that people are interested in, and look at 35% said housing options. So we're beginning to try to get at that with this first series, and we'll be doing more work on that. So our follow-up survey, perceived impact of age-friendly Ridgewood. Yes, 73% of the respondents said they're familiar with age-friendly. That was gratifying. 70% feel there's been a difference, but it's not us. It's all of our partners who are really helping to make that happen. And 45% feel that concerns about community supports and services have been addressed. So that's positive, I think, on that. Going forward, our respondents told us that, we need further work. We know that on pedestrian safety. You're started that work. We'll continue. Housing, transportation. And interestingly enough, because a lot of our respondents were, in their early 70s, they said, how about you have a range of activities and events to engage residents 55 to 70? And I know that some 55-year-olds don't like to be thought of as older adults, but hey, join the crowd so we can do more activities for that. So I think that's it.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. And I'll open up to questions from the council. Councilman Voigt.
Thanks for the presentation. It's very good. So a couple questions for you. The issue of pedestrian safety. Could you do me a big favor? Could you send your information to Bergen County and let them know how important it is? The freeholders and possibly the county executive. Just continue to reinforce the concerns we have on Franklin Ave, which is an issue, as you know.
Sure.
That would be great.
Mm-hmm. We'll be glad to. We know that the ball's really in the village's court to do some of the work and to work with the county and keep it in the forefront, but we can certainly send in that information.
Good.
Yeah.
And we, the leaders, the age-friendly 5-town coordinators, just met with Michelle DeLorgy and Julian Niels, who work for Mr. Tedesco, and we brought that up, and they seemed already aware. So
Good. Yeah.
I think it's great Ridgewood's gotten on the radar with that.
Never hurts to reinforce.
Right.
So the other thing on technology, I found that interesting, is you had 27% that needed help with technology. Does that mean that there are 73% who actually are comfortable with it, or?
I think that was on the speaking events, right? They're interested in a speaker event that would be about technology.
Yeah, but so you can't make the inference that 73% are comfortable with it.
Only the respondents.
Okay. All right.
But I think the bulk of our surveys were online.
They were. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a comfort level then with people who are age friendly.
Yeah.
That
right.
Yeah.
And
and
again, kudos to the library because they have their technology lab and they do work. And I know in my own practice, more and more I'm seeing people who are more comfortable with technology and are using smartphones and iPads and things like that.
Yeah, and it's also nice to see all the different programs that are at the library. I mean, it really has become a community center as opposed to a library. So that's nice to see.
And the community center with the grant from Columbia Bank, getting the 8 computers, and so that's great, and that will give another opportunity for older adults to get familiar with all the kinds of different technology. So, wow, really good.
Yeah, this sounds like a great program too.
Yes,
yeah.
Please come.
Yeah, I will.
We need an audience.
Yeah,
Spread the word.
And by the way, we're bringing Columbia Bank to be recognized on November 13th at the meeting here. So if you're around, please come. We're going to recognize for them for the generosity in making that possible through that gift.
Great.
So thank you very much. Yeah.
On the technology, one person suggested something that I thought was interesting, to have a place where people could bring, alarm clocks and kind of appliances that tend to be a challenge to set up. I thought that was worth looking into.
Yeah. That could be a makerspace kind of day. Yeah.
Thanks.
Bring your.
Councilman Walsh?
Well, nobody uses VCRs anymore, do they?
All our old videos. I just dated myself. So I guess my question would be the transportation, because the statistics on the transportation. So are we to assume that everybody is still just driving everywhere themselves? They're not using not using the public transportation at all?
No, public transportation that's so interesting, and we've done a training with a tip here in Ridgewood. No, a lot of people are still driving, but many are restricting their driving. So I'll drive during the day.
Okay.
I will avoid all highways. I'll avoid busy parking lots, and I will, do my errands early in the morning. And if it's raining, I'm home. So it is that population that we think we could open up the doors when there's transportation available for an option to use that when I can no longer use it. So some of the programs that we've been doing with those special rides have really been about introducing them to the bus. It's not so bad. Billy is fabulous. The bus is comfortable. And we can get you there, and you didn't have to park or drive or, Billy helps you get your groceries in the door. So, yeah.
So, but I guess it doesn't really delve into the ones that use it, why they're not using it more.
Public transportation?
Yeah,
Or
or the senior bus. So
yeah.
is it scheduling? Is it that they can't understand the schedule? Is it that they don't feel like the schedule fits the places they want to go? So I don't know if we've ever done a survey of the people that actually ride our senior bus, because we do have a nice, shiny, new senior bus, but is it that we're not going to the places that they want to go to? And that we get more people if they went...
We're thinking we need to get some of those people together and do some focus groups, because we didn't want the survey to be too cumbersome.
Yeah.
And I'd love to ask 10 more questions, just as you said.
Yeah, because
so we definitely plan
if you
that.
look at these statistics, even for a suburban area, so you figure urban areas, almost everybody uses some sort of public transportation, and suburban, it's usually a little bit less, but we've fallen off the...
Yeah.
It's really strange, these statistics, so I'd be curious if you could maybe... figure that.
I think we do need, and that, as I said, that is a challenge for us to try to really figure out why that's not used. And yet, we hear about the need. Yeah. I hear about the need all the time. Now, some of it is that it's restrictive. You can only use it from 10 to 2. Well, my doctor's appointment's at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, because that's when the doctor, so I can't use that form of transportation. So I think we do need to do that and point to point, and we heard, remember last year we had heard a request to go up to Ramsey to the interstate. And, we just didn't have the ridership that we thought we would. So now we're trying the Wyckoff shopping center. Yeah, as well as around Ridgewood and to doctor's office.
And Janet, Fricke and Beth Spinato and Billy have worked really hard to get the word out and work with us to try different things. It's been a great partnership.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah, so good. We're going to work on that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Sure, thank you. So I'm actually so confused by your survey, believe it or not, and I very rarely say I'm confused, but I'm confused.
Oh, okay.
So I have a couple questions, because I have a very different format that we received in our packets. It's very different than the presentation you just did, so I had kind of completed a deep dive into your analysis that we had received, and then you showed us this, and they're almost very, very different to me. And I'm very interested in this topic, and we want to make certain that we serve our older population appropriately and meet the needs as the population does age. One of the things, for instance, and just as an example, in your presentation you just did, you said 70% of your respondents were very familiar with age-friendly Ridgewood. Yet on the document that I received, and I'm actually wondering if it's the wrong document, you have over 50% that have very little knowledge or no knowledge at all of age-friendly Ridgewood. And that's a big discrepancy.
I haven't had that.
Which one? On this?
Yeah.
This one.
That's what we had.
We have this.
Right.
No, I
Right.
have.
Oh.
You see what you have,
Yeah, both.
Bernadette?
Yeah, both.
Oh. Oh, you know what? Right.
This-
No,
this
so,
On the one with the questions like in linear or in the,
yeah, so this, we received this document.
Right.
Right.
And then, then the linear, those lines, yeah. So on your slideshow, you said that 70% have familiarity with age-friendly Ridgewood, yet on the document that I have, it says more than 50% either had very little or zero familiarity
so
with.
which question is that?
So key findings on the first page? 73% familiar with age-friendly Ridgewood to some extent.
Yeah, so you know what, I'm actually one of the council members who went totally paperless, so I'm looking at a different.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a little bit different for me. So it looks like it's,
I have the
well,
physical
actually,
one,
it's on
too.
question number, let's just see.
One and that one. The
Okay.
first one.
Yeah, it's all of the ones put together.
Okay, one, right. All right, so there it is, question number one. Right. Right. Right, so here it says very little or not at all familiar with age-friendly Ridgewood, and that's more than 50%. And you just said 70% were very familiar with age-friendly.
No, not at all is the only
So in
one.
this document, the
Not
Premier
at
is
all is
referring
the
to
only
number
one
one?
that's not counted on the 73%.
I'm sorry?
Not at all is the only one that's not counted on the 73%.
Oh, so you remove the not at all from that calculation?
Yeah, it's
Well, this
just the
is
same
what-
as here.
Oh, okay, all right, so that changes the
It's
number.
because they're saying familiar to some extent. This is what Montclair made for us. We didn't say, that's why we're making
All right, so, but if somebody
everything-
says they're not familiar at all, then, and you remove those, then it bumps
was
up the number that's familiar.
27%
All right,
did
okay,
not.
so, all right, so I get what they did, but I mean, it's kind of, that's why you can appreciate why I might be confused, because I see people are not at all familiar, and it's kind of an odd discrepancy.
We kind of laughed at ourselves because we were trying so hard to get more respondents. We went to the farmer's market and handed out, our postcards. So in a way, we shot ourselves in the foot because I think we gave it to a lot of people who didn't hear of us. But we're happy about that because now they know about us. But of course, they said they didn't know us before.
So you can appreciate why I see the number
Yes.
Very, very
You can
different
look at it
and
both ways.
skewed, so it's kind of in my
Well,
mind. I'm thinking-
27%
I actually thought I had the
didn't-
wrong document. I thought I had maybe your original survey, and I was looking at different things
But
here.
27% did not, but then when you look at our survey, 73% did have
But
knowledge
also, I
of
think
us.
what Montclair
But-
did, what the research firm
Right.
did was, in their parens, they have they go down to very little.
Right.
They are being honest of which categories they summed up.
Okay. So then it brings me to the next question. So my mother, just so everybody knows, if she's out there, we'll say good evening to my mother. She's 83. She lives right here in Ridgewood. Longtime resident. She was not communicated with to take this survey, and so I wanted to ask the methodology and the outreach and where you found it, because when you rightly said, Beth, that more than 25% of the Ridgewood population, close to 7,000 residents, are 55 and over. So when we look at the number of 384 surveyed, and actually 282 actually responded to the questions, that's a very small percentage of that population. So I'm interested in knowing, because as Councilwoman Walsh is rightly pointing out, she's surprised at the results of the transportation response. And so I'm interested in understanding that methodology and the outreach.
So, yeah, maybe I went through those slides too fast. We had postcards in Village Hall. Heather put it in the e-notice. We had a letter to the editor in the Ridgewood News. We went to Hilt, all the adult group meetings that we could.
Postcards at Daily Treat. We did placemats at Daily Treat. We did Farmers Market. We gave out bags and postcards. And
postcards at the library.
Library, right. Hard copies of the survey as well as Survey Monkey. Now, it's in June and July.
Right.
So we know that that's always an interesting month. We also had information at the Graydon breakfast.
Okay, and then I just had one other question on here. So in your survey, there were no questions relative to, and it's a really important one, like the senior tax freeze, which is so critical to folks that want to stay in Ridgewood, especially with tax impacts. And we know we have the library here. They want to do, bond for their renovation. You all know that on Board of Education, you have that big referendum barreling toward us. So the senior tax freeze is a really crucial piece to the ability to stay in Ridgewood with property taxes. I guess you didn't ask any questions about the more granular programs that are available to help seniors stay age in place?
And not in our questionnaire. I did last year a talk on property tax relief and went through all of the property tax relief programs at the library. They allowed me to do that. Every year we do information on the homestead benefit and the senior freeze or the property tax reimbursement. And in fact, I often get phone calls on it because we also have been pushing that out through the senior center in Midland Park, which also serves Ridgewood. In addition, at our housing meeting, I have developed informational flyers on both those property tax relief programs, and I've asked and given Heather a number of other towns how they have been publicizing the property tax relief programs through brochures or whatever. So we have quite a bit of information on property tax relief, whether it's the veterans benefit or whether you're entitled to the municipal $250 off, depending upon your income, property tax freeze, and homestead benefit. The homestead benefit, as you know, that application just came out, and I've been helping a number of people with those telephone calls to get that done.
Good.
So it is on our radar screen. We also have information on it on our website.
Right. It's just like seems like an important piece.
It is very important
that we would ask those questions. Are you familiar with, like just a checklist? Are you familiar with this program, this program, this program? Because that is significant in aging in place. I think I'm just going to do a little more deep diving and probably reach out and ask a couple.
Great, we'd love that.
So,
thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation and all the work you've been doing. It's been about, I guess, 4 years that you've been kind of immersed in this subject. So I have, I guess, just one question that kind of goes beyond the survey. So in all of that time, what is probably your top concern that you've heard about from older residents?
It's the housing. That's the one we can't, certainly fix ourselves, but that's what people are thinking about.
It's housing options. It's the ability to downsize into something and be able to stay in Ridgewood. Not necessarily low income, market rate, and but accessible, one floor housing. Don't you think that's the number one? Second is transportation. So interesting to me. Again, that's why you do a survey, though, and you try to figure out what it is. So affordability would be the next. And I think that's a New Jersey problem as well as a Ridgewood problem. So.
And is there any kind of suggestions that you've either heard or have come out of, several years of work about, what could we do, to increase housing options or transportation or anything like that?
I mean, yeah.
What we hear are availability of a townhouse or condo, something where if I sold my house I could reinvest in something rather than rental units. However, we've also heard that some will be happy to have the rental opportunities that will have. So it's hard to know exactly what, but I think what we're clear on is they want a variety of options, and we don't really have that variety in Ridgewood. Yeah, and people do seem to want to stay here, which is a wonderful town.
I agree.
So,
thank you.
Wanted to add, I think one of the things that kind of stuck out the most was was participation, the use of technology. I think that's wonderful because I've met with some other residents, older adults who said, look, I'm having a tough time dealing with those electronic stuff. You know, when are you guys going to start printing out like a mailer that, you know, to send out? So it's in contrast to that. But the biggest surprise was this. I mean, the amount of options, right? And obviously the transportation thing has been an issue, right? It keeps coming up as a concern. I'm happy that there's so many options here, so many choices. And maybe if it's not so much an issue of people not knowing that these resources are available to them, but it's also, I think, in a way, you know, the same way that we kind of partner up, working with the community center, working with the library, you know, having the village with the e-notices, H-Friendly Ridgewood, you know, maybe also finding a way to kind of create the programming to get people out and wanting to do more things, you know, not just going to the supermarket or doctor's appointment or sort of give them more of the reasons to one, you know, to need the transportation and make it work. So I think maybe there's some of the things that we can do to work on that.
If I could,
Yeah.
I think you're so right, because when you decide to not drive any longer, you're cutting off a lot of your social, and so with transportation, the ideal would be to normalize your life. So we asked Janet Fricky, and you can. So if I wanted to go meet my friend for lunch in Ridgewood, but I can't drive, and I'm not so great at parallel parking anymore, or that the kiosk is a little bit more because I never can remember my, you know, license plate number, or whatever that issue is that sort of keeps me from doing that. And Janet said, of course, when the bus runs, if somebody wants to come in and meet a friend for lunch, yes. So I think that kind of normalization, we need to make sure that people understand that there's a flexibility in being able to use in the services. So, yeah, these are our challenges. Yeah.
And then, you know, the other thing I was shocked about as well was the low amount of participation in the survey. I mean, we're kind of have a reputation for some of this stuff. I know we've been talking now to the folks from the Census Bureau, and they feel that we had a 30% under participation in the last census. I know that we're working very hard. We created the Complete Count Committee involving the library, the village, the YMCA, League of Women Voters. And I think there's in the Board of Ed, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we can be doing to kind of get. So, you know, it'd be great to see what are some of the ways, especially if our older adults are using technology. You know, what is it that we can do to kind of get in front of them a little bit more to get the participation rate up? And because there are a lot of things that have come up, you know, they come up when you talk to people. They come up in a lot of the trends that you see in terms of, you know, what are the best practices for downtowns and how we plan around making them more, you know, pedestrian safe, friendly, and so on. And even some of the feedback that came up during the master plan visioning workshops. I mean, a lot of this stuff is really, you know, very important. I think it was, you know, trees and H-friendliness. Trees are friendly, you know. It was,
I saw that.
So I guess, you know, it's for all of us to get together and kind of figure out what can we do to drive these types of dialogues and get people more engaged to do that.
Well, we certainly are, you know, so pleased to work with you, and New Jersey Future, I think, might lend us some insight too. So, yeah, we're here.
Can you send the link, if there is a link to the umbrella, is that what you call that?
Yes.
Can you send that link? Because I think I'd like to take a look at that, and then maybe that's something we can add to our website. Do you mind?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So,
they'll be at that meeting. I can get a brochure for you and all that information, but it is...
I'll send you their website, too.
And, yeah.
And because we could always add that, I guess, like to e-notice or something, to say visit, and if that's a way for folks to kind of get that helping
I'd say there
hand,
are
if you
a couple of different ones. So if there are
Whatever you
umbrella,
have.
chore service, safely at home. So there are a
We're
few...
thinking of creating a brochure similar to that, transportation, with all those kind of...
Yeah.
Assuming, I guess, that everybody's vetted, that, you know,
Right.
yeah, because,
Right,
you know,
and
That's the challenge.
I had given this to Heather, and there's even a new document out. But this is a good document. So the county is printing that, and they printed, like, I don't know, 5,000, and they're down to the last one. They've just reprinted now, so, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Our next presentation is the library renovation update. So I'll invite those people up at this time.
Just please make sure those microphones are on there. Yeah. Thank you. They are? They're on? Oh. You see a green light at the bottom of the button stem?
Hello. There we go. Hello.
We know you're age-friendly,
Okay.
too, right?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for making the time for us tonight. If I could just take 1 second before we move on from senior services to the library. We have a tech program specifically for senior citizens on Tuesdays from 10 to 11 so that they can take the senior bus, and they can bring alarm clocks. They can bring any kind of device that they're having trouble with, and we have staff there to try to help them. And I know they can bring digital alarm clocks because I did. So, so feel
Nice
free
plug,
to.
Nancy. That was a nice segue. Good.
Yeah. Thank you. I'd like to say that most of tonight's presentation is going to be done by the volunteers that are putting their heart and soul into making the library the best it can be for our community. So I would just like to introduce our team tonight. We have our library board president, Gail Campbell, who you know. We have Rebecca Rubenstein, who's on the Friends of the Library as well as the Capital Campaign Committee. Rocco Orlando, who is on the library board and fortunately for us also an architect. And Renu Vitale, who is on the foundation board and also on the Capital Campaign Committee. And I'd like to thank all the trustees and friends and foundation members that also are here tonight. And with that, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to start by saying that Ridgewood residents have significantly increased the use of the library with greater demand for programs and services, technology, and workspace. The current infrastructure does not support the existing and potential future community needs. So to this end, the library has thoughtfully identified key areas of need to create a concept renovation plan, which was previously presented to you a year ago. The total investment required is approximately $7.7 million. The library now has a viable opportunity to receive a once-in-a-generation matching state grant and is therefore asking Village Council for $2 million to complement a private fundraise of $2 million, which will enable an application for a $3.7 million match from the state. In the next few minutes, we will do a quick refresher of the case to renovate, and then we'll spend the rest of the time addressing community concerns, including timing and next steps. Why renovate? The demand for programs, services, technology, and workspace has outpaced the anticipated demand of the 1998 renovation, and the current infrastructure does not support current needs. Strikingly, you'll notice that since 1998, the demand for physical books and media has grown only 13%, paling in comparison to the 250 to 300% growth in program attendance and reference usage, both which require additional technology and configurable physical space. The growth in demand reflects the needs of all demographics of Ridgewood, from seniors to children, from job seekers to ESL students, even to a person just wanting to learn how to use their new smartphone. Key areas of need. Here is where the data comes alive. In 1998, you would have seen patrons looking at stacks of books. Now you see teens crammed into the stacks and overcrowding due to demands for the library services. You see standing room only at events in the auditorium. And the library regularly has to say no for requests of meeting rooms of all sizes. But because the majority of our needs require us to only reconfigure the current space, the library will not have to reduce the size of their current physical book collection. So I'm going to hand this over to Gail, who's going to walk you through the finances as well as address key community needs.
I don't think that's on. Could you make sure the green light's on?
Oh, sorry. As I said, I'm Gail Campbell, President of the Board of Trustees, and I'm going to address the financial impact of the project. So as Rebecca said earlier, we are asking the Village Council for $2 million, no more and no less. How does this impact the overall plan? Well, the Capital Campaign Committee is committed to raising $2 million, and to date we have raised $1,850,000, thanks in large part to the generous challenge grant made by the Bolger Foundation and by the generosity of our Ridgewood residents. Together, the $4 million will allow us to apply for a $3.7 million grant offered by the New Jersey Library Construction Bond Act. In total, if we receive the grant, we will have $7.7 million that will enable us to finance our project. So as mentioned before, the impact on the average Ridgewood household would be $16.58 a year for 20 years. We are committed to continue to fundraise, and we are committed to modifying our plans based on the money available to fund the project. Next, I want to address some of the concerns that have been raised about the project. First, there have been questions about what happens if we don't receive the full amount of the grant or if we receive no grant. In that case, we will not ask the Village Council for more than $2 million. Next, we have Rocco, our resident architect, come up with an alternative plan based on our goals for the project. He will discuss that alternative plan in a few minutes. So even if we only have $4 million, we strongly believe that this is the time to renovate because the library needs to modernize to address current needs. The concept plan. As you're probably aware, the staircase has been a lightning rod. The staircase was put in to address strategic goals, but it will be addressed in the design development stage once we know our budget. The design development stage will include the community's input. So to be clear, we are open up to revising our concept plan, the plan that you've seen. The capital campaign, as we said before, the capital campaign will continue to fundraise and has already raised over $1.8 million. Another concern is parking. Parking is really a separate issue. Parking is a current problem at the library during some of the time, not all the time, but some of the time parking is a problem, but the renovation will have only a minimal impact, if any, on parking. In addition, trends in biking, walking, and ride sharing may also relieve some of the problems with parking. Lastly, questions have been raised about library services during construction. We expect that to keep parts of the library open during our construction. Some services or programs may be provided in nearby locations, and of course residents have access to Buckles and digital services. Now I'm going to turn this over to Rocco, who will discuss the alternative plan.
Thank you, Board. Appreciate us meeting with us tonight. I just have to say the Board of Trustees have been pleased to be part of it, and you have a lot of individuals who are putting a lot of time and effort to really improve our town, which is great. I am an architect, just to give you a background. I am a licensed architect in New Jersey, been for 25 years. I also am in commercial construction for the last 30 years. So I'm happy to be able to help out and look at the independent estimates that we receive, construction estimates that were very close, one in 2016, one in 2018, compare them and look at the plan that we have, which is a conceptual plan. Budgets were based on that. And as Gail mentioned, that we are open to modifying the plan as needed, and we're open to all the suggestions that we've received so far. So I'm just going to walk you through the conceptual plan as it's on our website and what an alternate plan would, with the reduced funds, what would change slightly. So the new teen room is something that is very important, something that we need to expand and is very important in the overall design. So that's going to remain as our key element to keep intact. Small meeting rooms and study rooms, we have that on the mezzanine area that we're looking to expand. With the reduced budget, we're not going to be able to expand, so we're going to have to modify and look at that area a little bit closely. Improve natural light and flow. The design calls for a very nice center staircase. The feature handles many different factors, or it helps improve the library and hall. It not only brings in light and opens up the space, it also has a connection point between the lower level, which was once the basement, to the upper level. A lot of people come in off the parking lot side, so it's adjoining between the two floors. It's a gathering space, and a lot of the functions work off of that central stair. It's a key element in the design. But with the reduced budget, we're looking to take the existing staircase that's there, do some modifications to open it up, to still get that connection between the floors. Not as dramatic, but that's what we're going to be looked to task to do. New furnishings. So the plan calls for all new furnishings. Specifically, I'm speaking of furniture and bookcases. It's expensive. This is proposed in a new conceptual plan. We'd have to cut back significantly if we didn't receive all the funds. Like the library is over close to 20 years, I think the last time it was renovated. So you can understand how weathered and used the furniture is, and it's in very need of a replacement, but we're not going to be able to fund all of that if we don't get the overall budget that we're looking for. Modify and relocate restrooms. In the new plan, it was looking for taking existing bathrooms, moving them to a different location, keeping the main bathrooms off the main hallway when you come into the library intact, doing some renovations to them, but there was single bathrooms throughout the floor plan that we were removing, relocating so we can open up the flow to the library to utilize the space much better. That will be unable to be done with the funding, so we have to work around that, which is, again, not the overall concept plans, but we have to reduce somewhere, and that's what we're going to have to do in that area. Modify and expand the mezzanine. I mentioned before, we were looking to expand the mezzanine on the upper level. That's something that we're going to have to eliminate and reconfigure the space as is. Last is the expansion and changing of the existing auditorium. We're looking to expand that and reconfigure. That's something that we're unable to do if the budget is reduced. It just won't be able to happen.
Okay, thank you, Rocco. So timing is important to us right now. So our best information is that the applications to apply for the state grant will be available around November 1st. Once the applications are available, we have 90 days to submit an application. When we submit the application, we must state that we have or will have matching funds. So that gives us until about January 1st to raise $2 million and for the Village Council to appropriate an additional $2 million so that we may apply for the $3.7 million state grant. After that, we anticipate that the grants will be awarded by August 1st, and then after that we will move into design development, and after that bid specifications will be prepared, issued, and awarded, and if everything goes right, we would break ground in early 2001. Oh, 21, I'm sorry. Next steps. As you can see, our next steps are to work with the village's grant writer to prepare our application, continue to fundraise, secure $2 million from the Village Council, apply for the grant, and then revise our project based on available funds. Thank you all for listening. Are there any questions? You're welcome.
We'll start with Councilman Boyd.
Thank you, Mayor. So there was a comment that was made earlier by one of the residents in public comment, and the statement was it's all about the books. And my concern is that it just seems to me that our residents might be ill-informed as to why it needs to happen, why it needs to change the inside of it. And you guys might want to think about making sure people understand what the reasons are, why you want to modify this. I'm still, my guess is I'm uncomfortable. I don't think that residents really understand why you're doing it. That's my point. And just one data point that said it's all about the books, and it really isn't about the books. So you might want to think a little bit about that, okay, as you're starting to let people know about the reasons why you're doing this, okay, because it's not about the books. A couple of questions on when do you need an answer from the council on the $2 million?
So as I said, when we apply for the grant, we have to say that the funds will be or are available. So when I sign that application, and I think the earliest it'll be available will be that'll be due is January 30th.
Right.
That's the earliest that the application will be due.
Yeah.
Right. So I have to be confident when I sign that application that either we have or will have those funds available. So we have to work within that time frame.
Yeah, and so there's a process we have to undergo too to go ahead and do that. So you might want to just kind of work back from when do we need to vote on that. I mean, it's got to be. I guess the bond has to be introduced, public hearing.
Has to be voted.
Yeah,
right.
And that has to be voted. Right. So you might want to think about the timing on that, and it sounds like it's got to be pretty soon. We got to put that on the.
Right. We were discussing that last night at our meeting, and Councilwoman Walsh was helping us with those meeting dates.
Yeah, the dates. Okay, good.
But,
perfect.
Thank you.
I'm just really impressed, I got to tell you, with the amount of money that's been raised, private funding.
Yes, we're very happy, too, about that.
Yeah. How much more do you think you're going to get?
That's a difficult question. I don't want to answer that question. I don't know.
Well, we have a lot of very generous residents.
We are certainly going to continue to fundraise. We've only just started, so I'm confident that we can raise more money.
Just from a pure reasonableness standpoint, for us to give you $2 million, and we're getting 5.7 on top of that, that makes just infinite sense that we would want to do something like that. I mean, even if it was you only got $2 million from private funding, and if we gave $2 million, again, it makes infinite sense because we're only paying for half to a third of it, so it just makes perfect sense to me. Just from a perspective of why I moved here, there were 3 reasons why I moved here. I moved here because of the schools, I moved here because of the downtown, and I moved here because of the library. Okay, and the library is it's a crown jewel in the town. And it is probably the best library in Bergen County. And, we have to, I think you guys, as you've rightly figured out, is you've got to keep it up to date with the times. It really is a community center. And, again, there was a comment made that you're not increasing the space, but that's really not the issue. The issue is that you need to reconform the space to make sure you got to meet the function. And the function right now is as a community center. So it needs to look like that inside, and not like a library, a traditional library. So it makes perfect sense to me. Even if you weren't going to expand it, if you were going to reconfigure the space, it makes perfect sense that you would want to do that. So I got to tell you, I'm fully supportive of what you're doing, and anything that I can do to help, please let me know. So
thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Yep.
Can I just address one of your questions? You actually suggested about the marketing that there has been insufficient, and that is a fair point. And one of the great things that you've seen, hopefully recently, is there has been more information in the newspapers about recent events and the fundraising, and we are aware of this, and you should be seeing a lot more presence in terms of our communication, so the residents understand that we are trying to bring better value to them.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, and thank you guys for the presentation. have been sitting with you and working with you over these months. I'm truly appreciative of all the work that the residents and volunteers have been putting into this project. When I first moved to Ridgewood, I was able to use and appreciate the last renovation. So when Nancy talks about it being generational, I had just had my first child, and now he's 22 years old and an adult, and my other kids have kind of moved through the library system, as it were. So, you know, and as we just had Sheila and Beth here, so, you know, the library is a resource for people who, you know, go in just to have some quiet time, to find a book, who want to bring their kids there, to introduce them to reading. I myself read about 2 books a week. So, you know, those are lifelong skills that we want people to have and children to have. I'm floored that you were able to raise $850,000 from donations from people who appreciate the library. And any of us who donate money, you know, we give what we can. So if somebody can give 100, they give 100. If they can give 1,000, they give 1,000. So for you guys to be able to raise $850,000 just from the donations of residents and people who appreciate the library, in addition to the Bolger matching grant, that just floors me. And that also shows me the passion that people have for the library. In the surveys that have been done in Ridgewood recently, the library is always at the top in terms of what they're using. Age Friendly just showed that the library was also, you know, a resource that people use. So I'm fully supportive of this project. I know that nothing is perfect, and we've all understood that. We've understood that with the Shedler property. Nothing is perfect. We do our best there. When we did the Habernickel Park, we thought the same thing there. So, you know, the fact that you're willing to understand that there may need to be some changes in the plan, you know, and the flexibility of that is really important for other residents who maybe aren't as on board as others with the project. So, because it's everybody's money. You know, we are hoping to get the $2 million donation totally, and maybe more, which would be great, but that other $2 million will come from residents and taxpayers. So, like I said, I'm appreciative. I'm hoping that this can go forward and that we will be one of the benefactors of that $125 million bucket of money that New Jersey has. So, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
So before I even ask a question or say anything, I just have to ask Nancy to give a shout out to the logo designer, that young artist, because I have to say, this is by far one of the cleanest, crisp, pristine logos I have seen in a long time. He did a beautiful job. So you might want to just give him a shout out because I think he deserves it.
Yeah. Well, he does. Well, this is actually done by one of our English as a second language students. This is his name is Dewang Sun, and he is a resident of Ridgewood with a young family. And he came to the ESL program because he moved here from China, and he needed to be able to develop an international presence for his graphic arts business. And I got to meet him, and he said he was so grateful. Could he ever do anything for the library? And I said, well, what's your day job? And he said he's a graphic artist. And I said, okay. And this was the first design he came up with, and we all just loved it right away.
It's both beautiful and brilliant. It is a beautiful and brilliant design, so kudos to him. He did a terrific job, and I remember meeting him. He was absolutely lovely. So I actually have some concerns. Curiously, that Councilwoman Walsh would have brought up the Shedler property, because I know in the past I've heard folks right up here from the dais say that bonding something has to bring with it a revenue stream. And so we have to kind of clear that from the desk and understand that this isn't a revenue stream item, and not everything would be. But I certainly have some concerns. I'd be very much interested in, my biggest concern is actually with the auditorium. That's really my big concern. I think that that's a big ticket item and not a big bang for the buck, because I realized that when we rearranged those chairs, and we had a lot of dialogue about it.
Yeah, we did.
So I continue to have some concerns, and would like to see this. I think I'd like to see one of the alternate plans or the alternate plan. Mostly I'm good with it. I just have real concerns about the auditorium.
So I think, may I say something? Oh, sure. Sorry, maybe I shouldn't have interrupted. Sorry about that. So yes, so the first thing, if we don't get enough money to do our $7.7 million project, is that the auditorium would wait till another time to be renovated at all. And certainly we are very flexible about whether or not we are going to, break the corner of that wall and square it off. So we are certainly listening to your concerns and taking them very seriously.
Okay. And then the other question, I'm going to agree with Councilman Walsh. I think it's amazing that, and I know it's a matching grant, so technically you're not at 1.8 million. So
right, that's true.
We had to shave off 100 from that, but it's okay. I'm sure you'll get there. But I find it amazing that, all those folks leaned in. I'd be kind of interested in knowing how many actual donors that came out to be. Just as a testament to the generosity of our fellow residents.
I'm not sure that we have that number.
I'm not sure, but what I think is really interesting is that was all based on a very quiet fundraising. We haven't even gone out, as you mentioned earlier, to the public yet. Right. So that $850,000 was raised with basically very little marketing and information beyond what people heard at that dinner. Yeah. So I think it actually is a testament to how people were inspired by what we want to do.
Right. So, I would like to just understand the alternate plan. I would like to see if there's some hybrid in there. I know you've been working on this diligently for a long time, and I know way back when, a number of years ago, when I sat in on a meeting, and I expressed, I think, the same exact concerns, and I continue to have those concerns today. It's a beautiful project. I think that we all love the library. It has served my family and probably future generations, many generations to come, my grandkids, and it's just beautiful. We love it the way it is. I'm sure we'll love it whatever iteration it is. But I think I would like to see that modification there. I would like to see those alternate plans.
Yeah, I mean, right now the plans, we didn't modify or draw a plan up. We did based on what the need is and what we can modify in the existing concept plan. Right. So it's very difficult because you have to hire an architect, right? You have to hire consultants, and it costs money. So it's almost like throwing money away if we don't know how much money we have to work with. So the idea was to kind of prioritize what we needed, use that as a starting point, and then once we get the funding in, then we can look at truly what we need. We got to hire an architect, design, develop, and change, and see what we need to do to the building. It's absolutely in the need of a $4 million makeup. I'll tell you, that's as a minimum. I mean, you walk into
$4 million.
But I'm just saying, if we got zero, right?
Right.
Minimally, this library needs at least $4 million based on what's there now. I mean, if you walk through, you can see the carpet's so worn you can't even see the pattern in some of the areas that you're walking in the library. So there's a desperate need to renovate that because of the use of the library. So minimally 4, and obviously the more we get, the better. And the plan has to be modified at that point. We'll have to work with whatever funds we get, but we just, again, we try to prioritize what we need and what the library needs. So it's absolutely going to be a moving, things are going to change as we develop and figure out how much funding is there.
And just to reiterate, anything we do to create an alternate plan will involve community input. So your voices, everything, we're hearing you, and we want to make sure we continue to hear you.
And I think that what you just said was actually critical as well, is the word need. And the question is balancing wants and balancing needs and understanding what.
Oh, absolutely.
And I know that when we say, was it $16.28 a house?
$16.58.
$16.58. Thanks, Nancy. It's interesting because that's on the average tax bill. So, when we look at that and we look at as it goes up, obviously it's more, and we have budget comes up for us in January, February. The Board of Education, they have a huge referendum barreling toward us, and the Board of Education has their, tax increases. And so when we start to look at all those little numbers start to add up, and we just heard age-friendly, and I know that it wasn't part of their presentation, but in the documents that we have, it talks about taxes, affordability, aging in place. And so I know $16.58 doesn't sound like a lot, but when we start to add it and keep piling on and compounding it over the years, it does turn into a lot of money. So I think I just really want to understand, the options. Thank you.
Yeah. Susan, can I just clarify one thing with the auditorium? And I agree with what everybody said, that, if we don't have enough money, we won't do this. We'd only add about 52 spaces, which is not a lot of spaces for $1 million expansion. But one of the important things it would do is give us we could get a better divider than the one that we have now, which takes 2 people about half an hour, and we'd have 2 usable spaces. Right now, when we do the divider, we have a good space in the front and a funny triangle of a space in the back. So we would kind of double our usable spaces there. And believe it or not, 52 more seats would make a difference. The Sunday, a week ago, not this past Sunday, the one before, we had a concert, some band called Rave On, not a local band, but they brought a lot of people in, and we had people we have pictures we could show you of people standing in the back. We had 157 people, and we would have had more, and they were standing in the back. So there would be benefits. I'm not saying that it's a must-have, but there could be benefits.
So Nancy, I remember, and I don't, you can tell me if I'm wrong, it's fine. My recollection is that the additional seats were, part of that was because the present configuration, there are no seats in the center aisle. And so I just remember this because then on the new design, those seats were incorporated into the center aisle, and then there were only really about 24 in the corner, and that added the 56. So correct me if I'm wrong or I misremember.
You have a wonderful memory, but we did fix that so that we have the same divider of in the middle of the rows
aisle, right,
with the new plan, with the larger expansion than we have now, because people don't like to slide across 20 seats.
Yeah, I know, I'm with them.
Particularly, the senior citizens that come to so many of our events.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So we'll take a look at that.
Well,
but all right.
May I just? I'm sorry. May I say something, please? Just so don't have any confusion here. So when we're talking about the project, and if we don't get $7.7 million, which is, obviously what we're dreaming, but we are very realistic that we may not.
Right.
So the auditorium is the first thing that we won't do, right? That's always
Understood.
been an option. Just so that's, as you say, is a want. Maybe it's the first thing that we're going to compromise. So just to be clear, so that there's not confusion over the design.
No,
or
I
anything
appreciate it.
of the
And don't get me wrong, because I think that angled corner is just crazy, but it is,
Well, that's from the old driveway.
Yeah,
that
no, I know.
used to go there.
Okay.
And actually, can I just address something you said about just making sure we're thinking about needs? This whole effort has been, since the outset, has been needs-driven. They've had lots of data as well as community input and research to see that this is what we need in order to support the current use of the library. We're right now sticking IKEA tables up. Teens are squeezed into the stacks. I've come and had to leave because there was no space for me, and they've had standing room events only. So this is all needs, and as Rocco said, the $4 million is the need at the very minimum.
Well put. Thank you.
Councilman Seaton?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. My question kind of focused on the alternative plan in the event that the library doesn't receive the $4 million from the state. So I think between your presentation and the Deputy Mayor's questioning, that was answered as best as you could this evening. So I don't have any further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say, first, thank you for the presentation. I think it's wonderful. I'm very happy that we have an architect on the board, because it's very helpful. If you think about putting the context of when was the last time we had renovations, over 20 years ago. At that time, Amazon.com was a tiny little bookstore. Think about how much has changed since then. even the things that we think about today that we have to take into consideration, ADA compliance and all this, so much has changed since then. And when you look, I think it was the second slide in the presentation that talked about how we've kind of moved away from physical books and media and just, moved into, if you can go back, there it is, more into program attendance, reference, and database usage. I mean, it's the story's there. And one of the things that I can appreciate is that, so far, though I'm not sure you've had a formal sort of community input session to kind of, go line by line on the project. I think you already, kind of preparing yourselves, at least fiscally, in the event that you don't get all the funding that you need. And Nancy, when you and I met, I think it was over a year and a half ago, and I think I believe more in you guys than you believe in yourselves. I said, look, the money, you'll get the money, because you do have so much support within the community. Whether it's people who've moved here because of the library, just anybody who you talk to. I mean, I come in and out of this building quite a bit during the day. It's nonstop. I mean, it's people coming in and out, and you see them dropping books off, picking books up. My kids love the space. But the reality is that, the way that we go about utilizing these public spaces has changed tremendously. So it's not about the physical books that I can go and find. It's about what is the space going to look like? What is the flow of, the light and the dimensions of the space going to do? How conducive is it to learning and to the research? So I'm also going to be more optimistic for you guys than you are about what's going to happen in terms of the impact of, moving into a construction phase. Because I think there's so much, right? We're not relying on that physical book and media anymore. I think you'll be able to, obviously not in the ideal space that the library would provide, but at least be able to keep your, the public engaged and bring the library to them while the construction is going on through technology and so on. So I think the disruption, we talk about the garage a lot and how, everyone's, there's a lot of concerns as to, what are we going to do during the construction? It's short-term pain for long-term gain at the end of the day. And I think we all wish we can snap our fingers and have, brand new renovation or brand new garages pop open. So I'm very excited for you. I happened to be present at the dinner we were when the Bolger Foundation announced a very generous gift. And I was very excited for you then. I'm even more excited for you now because I think that $850 that came, I think you're going to get even more than that coming in. So I think it's looking bright for you. I really do. The one question that I have, and it's just more of a maybe technical question. In one of the slides, I saw that the library is eligible for up to $4 million matching grant. How is that up to kind of calculated? Where's that coming from?
Well, they will pay up to 50% of a project cost. So since we are right now at, the project is at 7.7 million as we estimate it, they would pay no more than half the cost. So they have, the state very frustratingly has not yet said if they are going to establish a maximum per library. They haven't said if they're going to do an all or nothing approach with the proposals that they get, or if they're going to try to support more projects and give a lower amount. So there are so many unanswered questions right now. But you are so right with the use of the library being different. And I just wanted to say two things about the grant. One is that thanks to Bernadette's good idea, we did sit down with the grant writer. And after the grant writer spent some time going over the regulations with us and spent some time going through the library and seeing how it's used and seeing the areas that need updating, he feels that we have a very strong case and that we have a good possibility of getting grant funding. And they also, the grant regulations name 4 overriding priorities, and one of them is just what you said: public spaces and community centers in which people engage and interact for civic, educational, informational, and recreational purposes. And it's that interact piece that I think is so important, that people's interest in discussion groups and of all different kinds, and people coming out from behind their screens and interacting with each other. Like the library is, of course we support technology, but it's a wonderful way to bring people together, face to face too.
Can I add color to what you just said about the grant writer, which I thought was so interesting? So we sat down with the grant writer, and he started telling us about how he's also helping out Passaic, and they are non-compliant with, for people with disabilities. So he said, there's a lot of competition for this, and he sat down, and we could sort of tell he was thinking, wow, we have such a lovely library. And you hit the nail on the head. He looked at that data, and he said, okay, that changes things. And then he walked around with us, and he said, this is a no-brainer. This is a competitive bid. So seeing the library in action, seeing the data that we've been referring to, the needs-based driven data, it was amazing how quickly his whole demeanor and his attitude about this shifted to a very positive one.
Can somebody just go through, maybe Rocco can, the timeline? So if you were hypothetically groundbreaking 2021, is that what we said? 2021?
Yeah, I think there's actually a slide. Right?
Did I miss the length of time the library would be closed?
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to go through that?
Well, I could just say my estimation would. I was here when we did this in 1998, and at that time we added 14,000 square feet. We had to do asbestos abatement. You could drive a bulldozer around the inside of the library, and that was done within a year. So, Rocco, you're much more expert than I am, but it seems to me that we could do this. If we could do that, we could do this within a year.
Absolutely.
So, Rocco, you're saying this is a year-long project?
I don't even think it's going to be that. It all depends on what we're doing inside. I mean, everything is interior. There's no exterior work. There's no foundations. Everything is interior. It's climate-controlled conditions. It's not like we're building ground up. You have a lot of weather factors when you're building ground up, so we're inside, which cuts down on the time frame that you need for construction. So,
and what about from the structural perspective, because you're removing?
It's one element inside the center of the library. It's not like we're, it's minimal. And we have structural columns that are remaining. We're just separating and spaces and opening things up. So we're not taking structural columns other than where the open stairwell is. Everything else is independent. It's just a matter of interior walls and things that are being opened up in order to open up the flow inside the library.
Okay. All right.
And if I could just add one more thing. If anybody wants more information, you can go, I know you go onto the library website from time to time, and there's a button there that says Reimagine, and that brings you to a video, only 4 minutes, about the project, and a PowerPoint, and a separate website just about the project. So I'll email you all a link to that tomorrow.
I thought you were going to say if we wanted more information, stop by for coffee. But
yeah.
I guess not.
Yeah, I'd love that.
The door's always open.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Heather, I have a question because of the timing, and we did pull out the village calendar. So can you kind of back into the timing for us?
Well, if
what
it's January 31st,
30th, yeah,
30th, whatever, then what we would need to do is definitely introduce by December and adopt in January.
Okay.
But we could, if we have a majority, we could introduce in November and adopt in December. I mean, that's up to you.
Just for clarity, Gail, did you say that it had to be, you were going to file on January 1 or January 31st?
January 30th.
Yeah.
90 days. Okay.
But my understanding also was that if we adopted a resolution saying we were committing, that was sufficient to add to your application. So the application process, the actual grant process from the time of application to time of award could be 8-9 months.
Correct.
Okay. So we wouldn't want to bond too soon. We would wait and then do that. You would need a resolution to attach to that. So we don't have to do a bond referendum.
Well, that's a question I suppose that we may even want to talk about with the grant writer, because I don't know whether one is stronger than the other in terms of the commitment. But certainly, if there is a commitment to adopting an ordinance by resolution, that should basically state exactly what you might need. Nancy and I met on this and talked about this once or twice, and I think that probably is really all that you need. I think Susan's right.
Right. What we need is not the money in hand. We need the commitment.
Commitment, right.
Right, because you wouldn't want to do that. I mean, we wouldn't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
If we
yeah.
were committed to doing
Okay.
so, we would take that piece.
Right.
So you would have the document to say they're committed to doing this, but we would not have funded
Yeah, if
that
we had a
at this point.
resolution or ordinance from the village.
Well, the bonding is an ordinance, and you can adopt or vote on and ordain a bond ordinance without committing the money, but at least that provides the method or the process for getting the money.
Yeah.
A resolution committing to the $2 million from the council as part of this grant application is another one, and is another way of doing it. I think that's what Susan suggests.
So my question is, with the resolution, is it a 3-2 vote or is it a 4-1 vote?
Even with a bond ordinance, to introduce a bond ordinance, it's 3-2. To pass a bond ordinance, it's 4-1. A resolution passes with 3-2.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we also talked about, is because whatever we do, it is going to be the official record, and it's going to show the voting record on it as well.
That's right. So if we had to present a resolution with our grant application showing only 3-2, I think that the state would feel, well, there's not even solid local support for this.
Yeah, sure. That's a concern.
Right.
So I guess I have to ask the council, do you want to do a resolution in November? Do you want to wait, do you want to discuss it again and do it in December? You tell me.
Well, I mean, I would say the sooner that we can get it done, because their application can go in sooner. They don't have to wait until the January
Right.
30th deadline. I mean, if they're done and ready to go, it shouldn't be us holding them up in January if we have to wait. Because when we looked at the calendar, there's only
Four meetings
two of each meeting,
by the end of the year.
left
And I think
for the
it
rest
makes,
of the year. So
and I think it makes sense from the standpoint of the submittal of the grant that if it's done ahead of time, it looks a lot more positive.
yeah.
So can you confirm with the state that if we just do a resolution, that's satisfactory? Do you know that for a fact? I mean, we don't want to...
Excuse me. It's written that way in the grant regulations,
Right.
a resolution or ordinance.
Okay.
But the application materials have not been released yet.
Yeah, they're
So-
expecting
exactly.
November 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I still need to see what we just discussed. I need to understand the other alternate project and what those other options were.
What would you like to see?
I guess, so the cost on the second project, the alternate project, if you don't get all the funding, I think I just wanted to have a little more information and understand that. So maybe I'll just reach out to Nancy and
Yeah, if you tell us a list of what you like, I'd be happy
Okay.
to put something together for you, absolutely.
Well, what's difficult, Susan, is that, I guess to me our worst case scenario would be we have $4,000. We have $2,000 from the town, and we have $2,000 from fundraising. We get no
Million.
grant, and then that's one.
million.
No, you'll have to fuse
Million.
zeros
You'll have to fuse zeros.
Right.
No, I think I'm on the record. I'm still concerned about the auditorium piece. I am. So.
Right, but then maybe we would do better with the fundraising than we're anticipating, and maybe we'd have $5 million to spend. Maybe the state would give us a partial grant, and we'd get $1 million from the state. Doing the budget right now is such a moving target.
Right.
Okay, so we have one more work session before the public meeting in November. So I would assume that you're going to reach out to Nancy within the next week or so. So therefore, we should be able to discuss it one more time at our November 6th work session here. And then you can decide whether or not you're ready to move forward with the resolution on the 13th.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it
That's
might be
good.
helpful. I'll work with Nancy or whomever to prepare that resolution so that you have it and you can see what it looks like ahead of time.
Great.
So if you could have that on the 6th too, that
I'll
would be
get that for
great.
this- I'll get that
Yeah.
for November
So,
6th.
Mac, you and I could work something out with that, and I could even send it, not that the state is answering questions, but I could send it and say, would this be appropriate?
I don't know whether that's a good thing to do, but if it is, then certainly go ahead, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Thank you.
Thank you. And Susan, if you want to come by, I would love to go over everything with you.
And she'll make you coffee.
It comes with coffee,
I know
too?
where the coffee pot is. I'll make you the coffee, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, so discussion items. This is before the special public meeting we have. The first is awarding a professional services contract for the Hudson Street Garage Environmental Services. We received a proposal from First Environment to assist the construction effort of the garage. We're dealing with some environmental issues related to the excavated materials that will need to be disposed of. It's a resolution to begin the process with additional funding needed for disposing of the materials at $50,000. Any questions? The next item is awarding a contract for removal of the brick band tree well rings in the Central Business District. We received, there were 7 plan holders eligible to bid. The village received 3 bids. The bids range from a low of $71,950 to a high of $375,750. The low bid was from Bello Grande Contracting of Saddle River, New Jersey. Their quote was $71,950. The low bidder submitted a complete bid package. They're familiar to us. They worked previously for the village, so the recommendation is to award the work to Bello Grande Contracting.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So on this, we're removing those bands, but
Correct.
somewhere on here, and I'm looking for it, I had it highlighted on the other first packet before it was a complete packet. It says let me just find it. Okay, so remove the brick tree well rings.
Right.
Side, and then on, it says brick band restoration. So repair damaged brick band between the curb and the sidewalk and reset the bricks. So what aren't we removing the bands?
It's around the trees. Around the trees is what we're removing, but there's a line down the sidewalk also. So that's what's going to be replaced.
I can't hear it, so say
Okay.
that again.
Okay. The brick bands are being removed from around the trees in the Central Business District.
Right.
But on the sidewalk itself, there's a brick band, and so that's what it's referring to.
Strip of bricks.
There's a
The
strip.
flat one, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like
okay,
the
all right.
curb, that,
All right.
and then the sidewalk.
Okay.
Correct.
They're not going to remove the brick bands and then put new brick bands.
No,
in.
no.
Right,
No,
I
no,
just
no.
wanted to understand exactly what was that restoration piece meant.
Right.
Okay,
And
fine,
then
good.
I just had a question about timing. So do we see this happening this year, soon, or
Well, we're
when
going
it breaks, or-
to, if everyone's in agreement, we're going to award it tonight. And if, it depends on the weather.
Yeah.
Really, that's the
Depends on the weather.
answer. We got snow one year in October, we got snow last year in November, but other times it's been mild. So I think it all depends on the weather and the availability of this contractor. So if he can get started, he may. I don't know what other contracts he may have to finish himself before the cold weather. But certainly if it's not done this year, certainly we're going to have the opportunity to have him, we'll probably be top of the list for, March, April, whenever the weather breaks.
Well, good. I'm just glad to see this finally moving forward after several years
Right.
of coming up and talking about this at Shade Tree, and it's a bare minimum that we could do to make the trees survive now and give them a better chance. So I think it'll go a long way. So that's good
I'm
stuff.
excited.
And I just want to thank Chris Redeshauser because he really got this done quickly. He knew the council wanted it, and was able to put some other things to the side for the moment and get this done. So I just want to thank him for that extra effort.
And I
The
can
next
stop
one is a
taking
donation to the fire department. As you recall, the firehouse at West Glen Avenue, improvements were recently made to the driveway. It was widened, the wall was taken down, it was repaved, and in the front of the firehouse, a 10-foot by 15-foot island was made. R&S Landscaping of Midland Park, New Jersey, said that they would like to donate plants and the labor to plant them in this island. It's a total donation of $1,272. So I just want to make sure you want to accept this. They do not have any applications before any boards at this time.
Okay.
I think it's a very generous offer. The next one is amendment to the salary ordinance. One is to bring into line the title for the supervisor in parks to general supervisor parks. The other one is to modify the range for the supervisor of sanitation and recycling to reflect the actual salary of that individual.
Why did the title change that general supervisor? What is...
It's a civil service title. There isn't a specific
okay.
supervisor parks. For whatever reason, it's called general supervisor parks. So we're aligning it with the civil service title.
Okay, understood. Got it.
Okay. The next one is awarding contract for improvements to grade and pool restrooms. This is late breaking because this was just accepted this morning. We had 2 bids received. The bids range from a low of $238,000 to a high of $247,500. The low bid was from Triplex Industries of South Amboy, New Jersey. Their quote is $238,000. The low bidder submitted a complete bid package with all necessary information. They are a new firm to us, but the engineer has recommended award to this individual. He was at the bid opening this morning, and he actually did ask how quickly he could get started. So, we were thinking we might have to put this off till the 6th or the 13th, but due to the fact that we're able to award it tonight, if everyone's in agreement, perhaps he's ready to get going, which would be great.
And 2 items down the list, and it's another long-standing issue that's been kicked around and talked about for several years. So I'm glad to see, we're getting moving on this. And from what you just said, Heather, sounds pretty good. The guy's excited. He wants to get in there and work. So
we're excited.
More good stuff.
Hot off the press.
Yeah.
Everybody.
I also want to, again, thank Margaret Hickey and Tom Connolly of Connolly and Hickey, who helped us with the specs, and Chris Rudeshauser, who got it advertised, and so it was a group effort. So the next one that we're going to discuss before the special public meeting is the rental of office space for Epic. Epic, usually there's a job trailer. The job trailer really wasn't going to fit on the site, especially when the crane comes in. Serendipity, there was an actual storefront on Hudson Street that was available for rental. And so the Village of Ridgewood will be renting the space and then subletting it to Epic, and Epic will reimburse the village for all rental fees and other costs incurred by the utilization of this location. Was there anything else that I should add?
Is that on a resolution?
It's a 2-part resolution. One is us actually leasing it, and then one is subletting it to Epic.
And what number was that?
19,349 and 19.
Oh, there it is. Never mind. It was on my first page. Okay, got it. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so everyone's okay with that? All right, so at this point, I guess we'll go to the special public meeting.
Motion to adjourn and go to special public meeting?
No, just suspend, just suspend.
Suspend.
So move.
Sorry.
I still move it. So move.
Sorry, I'm trying to
Go
get out
home.
early.
Okay, so Councilman Seaton moved and Deputy Mayor Knudsen seconded, right? So,
Seaton? I'm sorry, Knudsen?
Me, Susan? Did you say Susan?
Knudsen.
Oh, Knudsen. Yes, either way, I'll say yes.
Seaton?
Yep.
Boyd?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Hache?
Yes. Motion to adjourn special public meeting and reconvene work session.
So moved.
Second.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Seaton?
Yes.
Boyd?
Yes.
Walsh?
Yes.
Hache?
Yes.
all right, so now we go into our regular discussion items. 1 second. The first is Ridgewood Water award of contract improvements to well houses and transfer stations. There are various improvements required at Ridgewood Water's Southside Booster Station, Eder Well, and Lakeview Well and Transfer Station. The improvement work includes such things as the replacement of old pumps and motors, new HVAC systems, new electric service, new emergency standby generator, modification to chamber entrance to eliminate confined space entry, fencing around the site, security signage, and lighting, new doors and windows, painting and/or waterproofing. There were 4 bids received out of 9 bids that were picked up. DJ Agarian and Associates is the engineer who we've hired to oversee this project. The low bidder is B. Ponteseca Contractors of Hackensack. Their bid was $1,987,654.32. The funding for this project is in the water capital budget. The next item is cancellation of water utility budget appropriations. This is to cancel the water utility budget appropriations for purchase of bulk water and credit card processing fees. The water utility is projecting a shortfall in water revenues because we had a very wet year this year. So in addition, we have not implemented the credit card payment. That won't be done until 2020. Canceling the water utility budget appropriations for these two items will offset the projected shortfall in water revenues, and that will reduce the potential of an operating deficit for 2019, which would then create a strain on the 2020 budget. The next item is declaring a vehicle surplus. It's a 2008 Ford F-250 4x4 Super Cab. It was actually taken out of service in July of 2018 due to the fact that it needed excessive repairs and it exceeded the value of the vehicle. Our next item is parking and the parking meter rate. So I'll have Bob Rooney come up, our parking utility director, CFO. We did discuss this previously because we do have to decide what kind of increase we may have at our parking meters coming up in January. So I'll have Bob go through the scenarios that he prepared for you. I know you had requested him backing into the number to see what the minimum was that we could withstand given the revenues. And it's all yours, Bob.
Good evening. So after our previous discussions, I went back and looked at the revenues and compared them to what Walker's expectations were, because we were relying on that for when the timing of our increases are. So I looked at it as of June 30th, and I compared the 5 different scenarios, starting with the permit-only increase all the way up to the $1.25 across the board with variations in between. In addition, since I now had September 30th data, I went back and looked at the revenue streams for that as well. Noticed a slight decrease in revenue, primarily because of the summertime parking, people on vacation. So July and August was down slightly compared to what the average was for the rest of the year. I also bumped up expenses to include the leasing of the kiosks for the 36 months. And I also looked at the new debt as a result of the garage, and 6 months of operating costs for the new garage starting in July 1 of 20. So with that being said, under both scenarios, if you look at the analysis, you'll see that the anticipated increase in kiosk revenue, which I think is where we had the mystery, would show that, let's go to September 30th, because I think that's the most accurate now, would show that to get to something that would generate sufficient revenue to meet Walker's expectations, we would at least have to have a $1.25 on-street parking only. So that would mean we anticipate a 9% increase in kiosk revenue for 2020 and a 17% increase in kiosk revenue for 2021. So that's my suggestion for the minimum increase. I would sleep better if we did the $1.25 and the $1 off-street. I think that would solve 2 things. Obviously generate more revenue, but also push the parkers into the lots, which is another thing we're trying to accomplish here, is to get them more space available on the streets. So with that being said, that would anticipate roughly 6% increase in revenue in the kiosk and 13% for 2021 to generate the revenue stream that Walker projected that we get to. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So what's been happening with the kiosk? You have now September 30th data. You've probably got a whole bunch of months for Broad Street and what's going on at Cottage. Chestnut, help me understand what's been the increase.
So the lots, you've seen that go anywhere from 20 to 40%. The streets, I can't tell because all our streets are combined into one number. so they're not bifurcated by area. So I couldn't tell you what I collected on North Broad in coins, because that's not how we break it down. We just put coins into streets, and that's it. The lots are the ones that are separated. But with that being said, in going back and looking at the kiosks, there was a slight decrease for the summer months. Again, vacations, not as much usage.
Okay, break that out a little bit more for me, will you please? I mean, you say it's decreased, but is it still like 25% increase from prior 40%?
It's still an average of 20%, maybe 22%.
What is the average?
Around 22%.
22%.
Yes.
Okay, and that's for the that's for the lots.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Walsh?
So, I've become a Park Mobile user primarily. I rarely use the kiosk, but I have to say, whenever I go into a parking lot, I see people lined up at the kiosk. So, I don't know how we're going to, get people to understand. It seems straightforward, and I have used it a couple of times, but I primarily use Park Mobile now. But I still see like a line of people kind of looking at, maybe they're just new to town, but if they're new to town, is there any way that we can have more,
training?
Not even training, but a more.
So we have on our website, we have the video that people can use to understand what it is. By putting in the newer models now, they're more user-friendly, they're more like using your phone, as opposed to what it was before, where it was very convoluted, and you had the keyboard down at the bottom. Now everything is on the screen, and from what I've been told and talking to Jay Chuck, he walks the streets up there. People are a lot happier with how it operates now.
Okay, all right.
So.
Yeah, I mean that's my only concern, that if this is going to be our main function, and like I said, everybody does it different. Some people have the placards, some people are going to have Park Mobile, some people are going to use the kiosk. But if it's going to go primarily to kiosk, everybody's got to know how to use it.
Plus, don't forget, it eliminates my coins. Eliminates the access to cash.
Yeah, sure.
Which is extremely important
Yeah.
going forward.
Yep. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
I put coins in the kiosk, right? So, I mean, I put them in the kiosk.
That's correct, but they're secure.
It doesn't eliminate cash.
They're secure once they go into the container. When they're removed from the container, we don't have access to the locks, anything, only the armored car service does. So it never touches anybody's hands from the time it leaves your fingers to the time it gets counted.
Right, I just wanted to be clear that because I don't do anything other than put coins in the kiosk.
Which doesn't coincide with your high-tech paperless profile.
I know, and I actually like quarters. I want to just go on the record. I actually like pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, half dollars, dollars. I like them all. So, Susan B. Anthony coin dollars. I'm a coin person, so I don't mind the quarters. I put the quarters in the kiosk. Yes. So, all right. I just want to go back to Councilman Voigt's question relative to the drop-off in summer. So the that drop-off is consistent with past summers. It's not a drop-off in the actual anticipated revenue. It's just what we have. If we have 100% capacity all year long, in those summer months we had 70 or 60%. That's all that is.
Right.
It's
This is consistent
seasonal.
with the prior year's
Fine. I just
dip in revenue.
Okay. All right. And then what happens if we just go, I disagree with the idea that $1 in the parking lot will drive somebody to drive into the parking lot, because I'm telling you, this is like people drive and drive. They'll drive around the block, and that's like $5 worth of gas 50 times just to get in front of the store. So they're not going to care about the quarter. I just think we should go across the board and do the $1.25.
I'll definitely sleep better then.
Oh, I think that I think we cut to the chase, just be done and do it, and I don't see any reason to not. I just don't think that quarter is a motivator. If you told me that it was $5 maybe on the street and free in the lot, that might be somewhat of a motivator, and I still don't know that that's a motivator. So I think that quarter isn't enough to motivate anyone to drive, block away or so. So I just think do the whole $1.25 across the board. Then it becomes, a supply and demand. There's no supply, the demand on the street, there's no supply. The only place there's anything left is the parking lot, and so be it. And also, the parking lots are actually closer to certain locations that are very popular. So I think that's, the other piece of it. So.
I don't know that the quarter difference would impact the average parker, but I think we'd be more looking at employees and like long-term parkers, like people who are just like planting themselves in front of their store, or the employees who work there. And that one quarter an hour isn't that big a deal, but if you're there for 8 hours, then you're talking about $2, and if you're there every day, then it adds up. Then that might be the motivator to get people into the lots. The people who are the employees and things like that. Not your average parker might not make a difference. But would we be able to go back and revisit the rates if in May or June we saw that we were going to have some kind of a shortfall, and then raise everything to $1.25 across the board and be able to still make it? Or
we can definitely do that. In my mind, I think you'd want to do this once. I don't think you want to go back and do it a second time. So, if you want to come up to the least painful, or you want to do what Walker recommended and just take it across the board and be done with it, I support that.
I actually just want to say, we have tweaked these amounts, and we have offered discounted parking rates in the parking lot, and still the same people are parking in front, right outside their door, and we've seen it over and over and over again. And there's one thing, interestingly, I think if you should do it in one shot, because otherwise it looks like there's multiple increases, and that might be not just confusing, but it might reflect in a way that we hadn't anticipated.
Bob, so how quickly will the new kiosks be rolled out? What's the earliest so they can go?
My game plan is to have them by November, December.
So already this year?
Yes.
Yeah. I happen to agree that a 25-cent differential is not incentive enough, because I do recall when we were offering the lower discounts at lower prices at Cottage Place.
Good point, yes.
And I remember talking to an employee in front of a restaurant that I enjoy, and I said, "Why are you parking here? It's 25 cents cheaper there." And at the time, it was 50 cents an hour, so you're getting a significant discount. You're going from 50 cents to 25. You get 50% off. I just don't think it's enough of a motivator to get folks from the street and onto a lot. My only concern is I do think that 50 cent increase is enough of a demotivator for some of the folks that are coming into the downtown already, because that's one of the challenges that I've been talking to the businesses, that they have felt that pinch, that impact.
So one of the things Walker said in their report when they did it was they did an allowance for that wave of people that said, "I'm not paying that increase." And then after 2 or 3 months, it leveled off and people were coming back. It was just the initial shock, so to speak, of that bump. But they said it always recovers.
Yeah, the concern, I think Walker looks at many years of data, and I think that there's a new paradigm shift in retail and downtowns happening now. And when we talk about experiential retail and talking about people being motivated to leave their homes for an experience, that experience is not just what are the attractions that are going to bring you to downtown. The experience is also what are the negative experiences that I experience as I'm coming in somewhere. And I think that actually, I think that adds to the negative, part of the experience to come to downtown. The increase in the kiosk, and I think Councilman Seaton kind of hinted to it. If we can get a good shot of what that looks like and see where the trend is going. Obviously, we wouldn't look at a summer month observation, but I think looking at from the beginning of the year and forward. And there's always seasonality, right? I mean, in the holidays, it's very busy, so you're going to see an uptick in the winter. And then seeing how that trend goes and adjusting it up if necessary.
We have no choice right now but to increase this to $1.25. every business knew this going in. Everybody understood. And I think so many times we sat here and said to the chamber representatives and to people who came to the microphone, we said, don't come here. Don't come now after the fact, after the genie's out of the bottle and we can't put the genie back in that bottle. Don't come here now and tell us that this doesn't work anymore or that we can't increase it or don't do this, because somebody's got to pay for this garage. And we're not going to be adding this to everybody's tax burden. They all knew it going in. Everybody said, build the garage. I was called to meetings downtown and I said, look, you got to pay for it. This means increased meters. This means increased parking. There's going to be a drop-off. We know that. Build the garage. So everybody went into this eyes wide open. And so this is exactly what we said. Don't then come back to us and say, this doesn't work. Because once we're in, we're in. And we can't put that genie back in the bottle. So I think we don't have a choice.
I don't think the suggestion is that we don't increase. I think we're all in agreement here that we need to increase.
Okay.
I think that's for certain. But I think when we look at some of these assumptions, the numbers can still work at $1. They do still work. We have a better cushion with our $1.25. And you can sleep better at night, Bob. Not that I don't care about your sleep.
I know you don't.
Preparation or anything, but I do care. But so it's not the point that we don't want to increase. I think everybody is ready for that. But I think a 50% increase on top of the 25 already in place and everyone's still adjusting to that, I think it's a significant amount of money in a very short time. I would rather do separate increases and spread it out than doing these kind of chunky increases all at once. I don't know how everybody else feels, but
I'm in favor of just doing it, getting it done, dealing with it, and moving forward. I am entirely not comfortable. If you increase to the $1, there's going to be a drop-off, and if you increase to the $1.25, there's going to be a drop-off, but that drop-off to the $1 might be the breaking point that hurts us. And so the drop-off to the $1.25 might still leave us a cushion that we don't take the hit. And I think that we knew this going in. We gotta just, my opinion is just move forward. We knew it, do it.
I just have a question. Didn't Walker say, though, that the next increase wasn't predicted until 2022? Is that correct?
25, I believe. I thought it was 25. I think it's a big span.
So there would be no increase until 2025?
I'll go back and
check. I don't
check,
think that's
but-
right. I think it's 2022 for some
Okay.
reason. I think it's a couple of years before the next
Well, let's put
increase.
this, it's at least 2, but I thought there was a 5. Okay.
But
So
in
at least
any
2.
case, okay. And so I'm concerned that if we increase it, let's say to $1, and then we decide, okay, July 1st, now we're going to go to $1.25, people are going to say, wait a minute, you just increased it in January. What are you doing? And we're going to get the complaints. We definitely will. You'll get the complaints too. Because I think that if you increase it, whatever it is you decide, we have to be comfortable that it's going to last us for this year. Because I think it's going to be tough to increase it again unless you do it like at the end of next year, maybe November, December. Also, let me just make sure, just because we're going to get the kiosks in doesn't mean that they're going to be up and running necessarily before the end of the year, right? Some of them may, but I don't think all 85 kiosks are going to be up and running by December 31st.
Part of the issue is whether getting the concrete bases in,
And having the time for Signal to install them.
Yep.
So, they may not all be in until mid-January, if we do get them when it's expected. They have been ordered, and so, we're hopeful they'll come in on time. But, it's going to take time to install all of them everywhere and remove the meter heads, so.
I mean, look, in the best, outcome is though we keep everything at 50 cents, we can pay for the garage, we don't increase anyone's taxes, but it's just not reality. This is our funding for the garage. That's the reality of this. I mean, I'd love to be dropping a dime in the kiosk, but it's the reality. It's what we signed on for.
I just think $1 is too low. So if you do anything, I would do $1.25 on street. But to Susan's point, this is a commitment we made when we built the garage, and we all decided to go forward with it. We had Walker, who are the professionals, who determined what those increases should be, and we're working towards it. There is no guarantee that your kiosks are going to maintain at 20% or 40%. Yes, they do better, and they've done better in other communities, but I fear working with projections. I like concrete numbers. I'm sorry. So I just think that $1.25 is the minimum that I would.
So Bob, I have a question. On one of your sheets, you have, it's September 30th, you have $1.25 on-street parking only. Does that assume that we're going to have 75 cents on off-street parking?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Got it. All right. And it looks like the numbers there are within, it looks to me like they're within a comfort level of, if we're getting a 22% increase on our kiosks, we certainly could meet those numbers at 75 cents off in lots and on street $1.25. And that's enough of a differential for people to think, okay, I want to park on a parking lot.
If we have any fall off whatsoever, any point where there's any drop off, we're going to have a problem. And I feel more comfortable having a cushion than less than a cushion. I have to tell you, this is what we signed on for. We knew it. We have to keep moving forward with this. If you were willing to vote to bond the garage, that's the benefit, and this is the burden that we have assumed in doing so. I almost feel like it's irresponsible to do anything else. It's irresponsible.
I would maybe be more in favor of $1.25 on the streets and then $1 in the lots, with going back to revisit it early on next year to see if we need to do the final increase, which it would be. I mean, it's a balance. Businesses you hear it all the time. They're struggling, and it's every little thing. There's all sorts of different taxes. There's new fees. Prices are going up, and it's just another thing. I mean, obviously, I understand we have to fund the garage, but you're giving a hit to the business community if you overfund it. But you still have to fund the garage, so I would definitely be in favor of increasing the rates without a doubt. But if we could get away with a slightly smaller increase, I think that would be beneficial to everybody.
Just to point something out, when people use Park Mobile, they're already adding 40 cents to the transaction.
That's right.
So they're already up there.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're going to use the kiosk, they're only going to pay another dime or whatever it is more than if they use Park Mobile. Now, I understand it's a convenience, but...
No, and you know what? You're exactly right. They were paying that extra money when they were paying 75 cents and 50 cents. They were paying actually 85 cents
right.
for that spot. And if they go there for 15 minutes, they're paying whatever the 15-minute spot is at the time, plus the 35-cent convenience fee, which obviously we cleaned that up from our end, but they're still paying that. So I think that this is kind of a misplaced belief that there's going to be, a concern over the 25 cents in the lot. If we're willing to say $1.25 on the streets, we have to be willing to say $1.25 in the lot. And, there will be drop-off, and that's the inevitable. But we made a commitment to this. This was our commitment.
You want to vote on this?
You can't vote, but I do need a consensus so we know what we're doing for the ordinance. So
I'm in favor of the option one with 75 cents off street and $1.25 on street. I'm comfortable with that.
We can't. We're going to have. This is so irresponsible. I'm stunned.
I completely disagree with you, because if you look at the increases as it relates to the kiosks, we are within a comfort level that is very easily met in the first year and likely met in the second year. So and it also motivates people to park in the lots. I think it makes perfect sense.
Are you comfortable with that?
No. Truthfully, no.
Okay. We have our CFO sitting here.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know what's going to happen 2 years from now. He has no idea.
And you do?
Based
you have the crystal ball.
Based on what he's given us here, I'm entirely comfortable with that. I don't want to get an argument with you about it. That's my opinion. You have your own.
You know, here's the thing. Here's the problem with this. Because if his crystal ball is at all cloudy, we're stuck. We're in the red. And we've now committed to this project, and somebody has to pay then for the deficit. It's irresponsible. It is a commitment that was made by this village council when you voted. You wanted to stick the shovel in the ground. You want to do the groundbreaking. You want your photo op. But now you don't want to assume that responsibility and commitment and fund the garage now. Now everybody wants to run and scared behind the kiosk. It's outrageous. I'm good with the $1.25 across the board. I'm not necessarily thrilled to have to pay it. I will, and that's a commitment we made.
So you have two different votes.
It's not a vote. We don't vote during a work session.
It's not a vote.
Well, you want a consensus. You're looking for a consensus.
I want a consensus.
So I'm giving you an opinion. Whether it's a vote or an opinion, it's an opinion.
You have 4 different views.
Yeah, so that's fine. So the other people have to weigh in. Susan and I have different points of view. That's fine.
Okay. So, where are we going? Councilman Seaton?
Well, I already said,
Okay.
$1 in the lots, $1.25 on the streets, at least.
Okay. Okay.
So semi-consensus, 2 for $1.25 on the street.
I'm going to agree with Councilman Seaton.
Okay.
125 in the street, 1 in the lot.
Then I'll do that. But I'm going to tell you, if there's any deficit here,
Well, yeah, we go back.
Look, you were just told. I don't think it could be more clear. If you raise it now, it looks like you've increased things twice. It's not going to make a difference. Look, if I'm going to go to Sook, we won't use Sook right now because Hudson Lot's closed. If I want to go to, give me something near Chestnut, the Chestnut Lot.
Chestnut Deli?
Right, Chestnut Deli. If I want to go to Chestnut Deli and I wind up in the lot, it doesn't matter. It's just as convenient to Chestnut Deli as the street is. If I want to go downtown to Walgreens and I park it doesn't matter whether I park on the street, it's the same distance to park in the Cottage Place lot. It doesn't matter. It's a quarter. It's not a motivator. It is just not a motivator. So I mean, if that's what 3 of you decide, I think the 75 cents and $1.25 is absolutely irresponsible. It's irresponsible. It's shockingly irresponsible. I'm okay if we go with that. I still think it should be $1.25 across the board.
So, Susan, I'm going to make one other comment. I understand your passion here.
It's not passion. It's really frustration
passion.
That there was a
It's
commitment made.
passion.
No, it's not passion. It's a commitment. It is really kind of shirking a responsibility that you assumed.
I don't think anybody's shirking their responsibility. We all have an opinion. I use Park Mobile, and I'll be honest with you. When I go in, I pull up my Park Mobile, and I say, how long am I going to be here? An hour? Let me put in an hour and 40 minutes. So I don't think I'm the only person that uses Park Mobile that does that. So if I'm going to be there an hour or 40 minutes or an hour and 40 minutes, so I think there is balance in that we're going to be getting paid for time that people aren't using, and that has value to it. And so we're not really sure, if we say $1 in the lot, you may be getting $2 for the 1 hour because Bernie Walsh pulled in and only stayed 30 minutes at the Daily Treat, So, I mean, I think there is going to be that balance.
Okay, fair.
And again, I think the kiosks, as we've seen, have increased the revenue exponentially. So I feel comfortable with the dollar.
All I will say is you want to err on the high side, because if you come up short, then the parking has a deficit, and guess who has to pay for it?
But as Councilman Seaton said, if somebody's paying an extra $2 a day, that's $10 a week for somebody that's working in the CBD. So, and again, as you know.
And I'm not saying to just be done with it and that's it. Like, I'm saying to look at this early on enough to see if we're trending low or it's too close or something like that, then I'm happy to go back and do $1.25 across the board. I'm not shirking my responsibility in that respect at all. I'm just thinking more of a balanced approach. So it's if we could do it with $1.25 and $1, that's great. If we can't, we have to go back and raise up that extra quarter. But if we don't have to, then it's probably better for everybody.
So let me just conjure a scenario, because we have crystal balls and things tonight. Let's just say, hypothetically, the effort to make the parking lots available for $1 in fact results in not just a drop-off, but a shift to those lots, unanticipated shift, and far more street spots available. What just happened to your quarter differential?
Revenue went down.
No, right, thank you. Okay.
Or you could say there's more street spots available and you have more patrons coming because they have easier access.
No, you had that your drop-off happens. We know the drop-off happens. What I'm saying is, hypothetically, because now we've decided that there's a less of a value and a greater value to these, which we know, and now you have a shift. You have a drop-off and a shift. And what percentage of the cars have to fill into those lots to create a scenario that quarter differential now becomes significant. And I don't think it would take much. It probably wouldn't take much.
I don't know, but there would definitely be an impact.
Right. Okay, but...
So Mayor Hache, I haven't heard from you.
Well, you heard from me. I think we have...
Crazy 8 ball.
What did you say?
Yeah. Since I'm not the only person here who doesn't have a crystal ball, I just think we do have the benefit of being able to track these things and have trending. We're not etching things into stone. You know, a 6-month look-back period, I think, gives us enough of evidence to see what the trend is. That's all I'm saying. And it's not about anybody not willing to face the reality of what this is. Not at all. I just think that if we can go forward with an increase that can, at least in 2020, as you have here, can cover us, but we're seeing that maybe it's not as hefty as we thought it would be going to 2021, we can still make the adjustment up. No matter. Look, people are going to complain we increased by 20 cents, 25, 10. There's always going to be a complaint. If we sit here and worry about what we're going to complain about, we wouldn't do anything.
Better they complain once than...
Look, I'll give you a perfect example. The mosquito spraying. I had a flood of emails, people that were upset about the mosquito spraying. And then the other half was, how come I'm not getting sprayed? So you're never going to make everybody happy.
Can't please everybody.
So, but I'm not sure what your recommendation
So you're
was.
saying $1
No,
in a lot, right? $1 in a lot and $1 quarter on the street. Is that what you said?
No, what I said originally was $1 across the board.
$1.
And then when we started getting into what are the different combinations, some suggested $1.25 on the street and $1 on the lots. I'm not sure, to your point, if that differential is painful enough to drive behavior. But you know what? If we're going to say, hey, listen, Walker knows about parking more than any of us, their evidence does suggest that differential, any differential in parking, does drive behavior in terms of people, go to park. I haven't seen it. It didn't happen when it was 50 cents versus 25.
But to that point, Walker recommended $1.25 across the board.
Across the board.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you. Right, they didn't make the $1 and $1.25. That
Correct.
came here.
So you're saying $1.25 on the street and $1 on the lot?
Or $1.25.
No, that was what was.
You're just saying
discussed.
$1. You're saying $1 everywhere.
That's what I said, right. And
All right. So
when we talked about one
so
and
we
one,
have three.
125 and 1, 125 and 75, That's why I laughed and said there's 4 different views.
Yeah.
And then Councilwoman Walsh said, well, 125 and $1 sounds good.
Right.
So that seems to be the more consensus view, 125
Right.
on the street.
I agree.
$1 on the lots.
If you're willing to go to that, at least we have a majority
I
to
think-
vote it.
We need 4.
I'm 75 and $1.25. I think that makes sense to me. It drives behavior to the lots, and we're going to hit that number if we're hitting 22% increase in kiosks, since we only need a 9% increase at least the first year. We're fine.
All right, so I
I'll tell
think
you what, I'm going to go because I think that we have to resolve this.
We do, tonight.
I will, to Bernadette's comment, I know that I was a big proponent of the kiosk because we knew at the time that we were going to have that increase. So I will agree to that point, even though I firmly believe that it is the most responsible thing to do the $1.25, but to kind of get this resolved at this moment, I'm willing to agree with Mike and his $1 on the lots and $1.25, and that will be your 3 consensus. And what are you going to do now?
And then, well,
Something I
maybe
can do.
we can put in a caveat too, or we'll do a definite look back in May, say May, so we'll have like 5 months of the year, and then that way maybe we can have a better idea of, is this gonna work, or do we have to go with the full $1.25, but I think we look at it, as early as we can, where we would have reliable data that could give us a better idea.
Right,
And
and
I
then,
just want to know, I just want to go on the record that I really disagree with this, but it's okay.
and at that time, we're going to have to decide before that time, we're going to have to decide what we're doing in the garage and what we're going to charge in the garage, so.
Look, I would
that-
go the
that's
other way,
one.
okay, just to make it more interesting. 1.25 across the board, and if we're talking lookbacks, if in 6 months, the projections are much higher than what we thought would be, do the unthinkable.
Roll it back.
Lower by 1/4.
Oh, I'm good with that. Okay, I'm good with that.
And you know
I'm
what?
good with that. Yes, are you
It's,
good with that, Mike?
it's completely, the precedent is there because previous council had lowered parking by 1/4 after, I
did.
think, a year.
I don't mind being
look
second
back.
in that regard, that's fine.
All right, I'm
And
good.
I was thinking the same
good
thing
with
too.
that.
If we're flush with cash and then, there's more than enough cushion, then we go out and say we're going to reduce parking in the lots, and then everybody says yay, and then maybe it's even better. I don't.
Headline. So wait, you good with the
So $1.25
$1.25
across the board, right?
then?
Is that what you heard?
Good with
$1.25 across the board?
$1.25 across the board?
If that's a consensus, then.
Okay. All right, so now there's been a
We have a look
shift.
back,
We have a look
6
back.
month look back?
There's been a-
Okay,
There's been a shift. Now we're $1.25 across the board.
okay,
Are
okay.
you okay with that, Bernadette?
I'm not.
Okay.
But you have a
But you are.
consensus, so you don't need me.
So $1.25 and $1 in the lots with a 5-month look back.
What?
No,
Well,
no,
that's what I was in favor.
no. Stop, you're
That's
driving me
not gonna
crazy. You're driving him crazy.
Wait,
Okay.
just so I understand, we're $1.25 across the board, and
6
then we're
months
going to do a
look
look
back.
back.
Right,
Do the
right.
look back in July, 6
Okay,
months of
fair.
transactions.
And then we'll see.
Assuming all the kiosks are in place, January 1, right? But we need 6 months of operation with all the kiosks. I think that's fair.
Okay. Okay, so that's how we're going to write the ordinance. $1.25 across the board with the understanding, and we understand that. Okay,
Can you pull that?
I'm sorry?
Can you pull is it an ordinance?
It's an ordinance.
Oh, okay, it's a
I don't have
resolution.
to
Sorry.
pull
All
it.
right, got it. Fine. We got it.
Okay. Okay, thank you for making the decision.
Yes, thank you
Now
very
we
much.
can move forward. Okay.
Have a good night.
Yes. Thank you, Bob. All right, so our next item is under budget awarding contract for state cooperative purchasing. This is for continuous samplers for collecting wastewater samples for laboratory analysis at our water pollution control facility, and the current units are inoperable. We solicited quotes for new samplers for the pertinences. Low quote is actually under New Jersey state contract. It's a quote of $19,080.05. It's, I think it's Hatch, but I'm not sure, Hatch of Loveland, Colorado.
Oh, well.
These funds are available in the 2019
Let it be
capital
clear that there's
budget.
no relation, there's no...
Spelled different.
Oh.
Okay. The next one is to award a contract for vehicle roadway barriers for the police department. As we know, unfortunately, in today's world, many times there have been vehicles that have gone into crowds. These barriers would help to stop that. It would be 66 barriers, and we could close approximately 6 intersections with them. These barriers can be configured in various ways because they're in an interlocking system. It will also allow emergency vehicles into the event with ease, or the barriers can be locked together. The system will be housed in an enclosed trailer, and most of the trucks in Ridgewood would be able to pull it. It's $39,976. It includes the 66 metal barrier units, the connection pieces, the 2 setups that will allow a brake for emergency vehicle access, and also the trailer. And this is in a capital account, and it is to be awarded to Ram Catch Inc. of Arlington, Texas.
So Heather, I have a quick question on
Go
this.
ahead.
So they're saying these are metal barriers. Are they filled with anything? Are they?
No, I don't believe they are.
So do we know how much they weigh? What is the spec on them? There's no.
I can find out if you want.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, because we have those big, those big orange things, and they fill it with water.
Yes.
Right, and we fill those with water.
Right.
So, and then they have to be emptied out, obviously,
Correct.
if it gets too cold, and
Correct.
So I guess these are the.
These are all weather, and you don't have to fill them, and you don't have to.
Yeah, I just don't understand
Then how
how
heavy
they.
are
Yeah, I don't understand how they stop
Let me
something.
see if I can get a
Yeah.
weight and also like a picture. That
Yeah.
might, tell you better
I guess you
what it
could
looks
Google
like.
it.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
could Google it.
Okay. The next one is the grant writing services, the Millennium Strategies. Contract is up at the end of the month. We've had 2 years with them. As a reminder, Ridgewood's unique in that we do apply with our employees for NJDOP paving grants, community development block grants, open space grants, historic preservation grants, and police department campaign grants such as Click It or Ticket. Most other municipalities Millennium Strategies works for, they apply for those grants for those municipalities. They charge $3,000 a month. Last year, I was able to negotiate it down to $2,500 a month, and I negotiated again this year for this coming year. And again, they were willing to hold their price at $2,500 a month with an option for a 1-year renewal at that. What I found with Millennium Strategies, it's allowed the village to become aware of new grant opportunities that we wouldn't have known about otherwise. Many are funded through corporations or nonprofits. Many of the larger grants we've applied for with Millennium Strategies, we could not have been able to do in-house, either due to lack of expertise or lack of staffing. I'm recommending that we award the first year of a new professional services contract to Millennium Strategies. It's been helpful in obtaining grant funding for the Village of Ridgewood. The grants awarded to the village over this past year has been equal to $26,500. The pending funding, we have 8 grants now that are pending. If we get them, all of them, it would be $733,317. And there's one very big one, which is for $487,000. But a lot of these are very large as well, like almost $9,000 for a police grant, $20,000 for adult nutrition education program, tactical vests at $4,000, Ridge Road improvement, $75,000. So there are a lot that are high, and possible tree inventory, $10,000. So we do have a lot in here, which we're waiting to hear, and they were just filed in, September or October. So, we're hopeful that we'll get some of those grants. So I would recommend we continue. Again, we don't have the staffing or the expertise to really file these grants or do the research for these grants.
So Heather, I just make sure I'm clear on this. So this past year, we paid them $30,000.
Correct.
And we got 26 back. So
26.5, right?
Okay, so it costs us more
to pay than what we got.
Than we got back.
Correct,
And,
but
and
we-
so, and so, is there any way we can wait on these other grants? You got 3 of them in a row that's supposed to be due last month, and it'd be nice to know whether we got one of these or not. I think we're spending money, we're losing money to get money. We're spending more than we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, I can find out whether or
It just
not.
doesn't make sense to me.
Actually, 20,000 of the 26,000 went to a private business, Health Barn. So we spent $30,000, 26,500 we got back in grants, but 20,000 of that went to Health Barn. That's a private business.
Well, no, it actually went to recreation. They applied, but yes, Health Barn did.
Health
is
Barn ran
doing
the
the
programming.
programming.
She
Yes,
got
they're
paid
doing
to
the
do the
programming.
programming. So the grant money ultimately did not come to Ridgewood. It went to Ridgewood was the facilitator, but the money went to Health Barn.
Well, it's benefiting Ridgewood people who are attending the program.
But the money, the program was facilitated by Health Barn, and they were paid the $20,000 to do it. A business.
Okay.
So I'm just making the point that of $26,500, 20,000 of it went to a business, and I appreciate that it was an inclusive after-school program, but I just have to point that out.
So Heather, can we wait a little bit on this? I'd like to see whether or not any of these, larger
can-
grants are realized. I mean, it looks like we're spending more money than we should be. We should at least be breaking
Well, I can
even.
tell you that, quite frankly, what we'll continue to apply for are the ones that we normally do, and we probably won't do too many others, because if we had to hire someone to be a grant writer here, part-time even, we'd be spending more than that. And they do constant research. They give us, possibilities of grants throughout the month. It's usually every other week. I get a listing of them, and they're sent out to the directors of those departments, or sometimes a council liaison for a particular committee, like in the case of the tree inventory. And so I think it's been very worthwhile, but I understand what you're saying.
How much of the low batting average that we're having with these grants due to our kind of grant worthiness or lack thereof? Is that the issue?
I don't understand.
In terms of we talk about the money that we spend for a grant writer and
Right.
the grants that we apply, but we don't seem to get enough of that back to justify the expense. Is that because of our grant worthiness or lack thereof? Is that,
Oh, I think, a lot of them are nationwide grants, and some of them are based on probably can that municipality afford it, so sometimes we don't, even though we apply. I think, unfortunately, we've applied twice for the COPS grant, and that's with the Board of Education, and it's the United States Department of Justice COPS School Violence Prevention Program. And, we have very worthy applications. It's just, again, it's a nationwide grant, and, perhaps they look at it and say, oh, Ridgewood could probably afford something like that,
Right.
Unfortunately. And so perhaps that's part of the reason we don't get some of the grants. However, I do think that we've been, we've benefited, and we've been able to offer programs we may not have been able to offer in the past. I can find out, you're right, some of these say 2019. Sometimes even though they say that, they don't issue, they don't make a decision until later. But I will check to see if any of these have been awarded, or if we've even heard, that we haven't received them. But,
I have another question, though. Aren't the New Jersey DOT Safe Streets, we were doing that one all along. That's one that we were doing from the village before we were.
No, we never did it. We didn't. It's always been done through the grant writer. We've done it 3 times through the grant writer.
The Safe Streets, the DOT grant?
The Safe Streets to Transit.
The
Ridge Road.
Okay, so it's
yeah,
different.
that's
Okay.
the Ridge Road improvement.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then, so there's none of these, on all of these grants that have listed, because I thought that there was another one I thought we did ourselves. So you're saying we've never done any of these grants that.
Correct.
Not that we've gotten any of them anyway, but.
Correct.
These are all separate from what we've done in the past.
Correct. So all the ones we've done, the DOT grants, which we're always very successful at, but that's for paving grants. The campaigns for the police, We're always successful on those. We're very successful community development, open space, and historic preservation through the county. So, we'll continue to do those. We're successful at them. But I just feel that we wouldn't know about the other options, and even if we did, we may not have the expertise to be able to complete it.
So you look at this almost like as an insurance policy. You pay the premium, as much as you hate to do it, but then you regret, you kick yourself if you didn't have that.
And there have been towns which have the same kind of demographics we do in sense of income, and they have been awarded very high grants. $400,000 a few years ago was awarded to Franklin Lakes. So I think it matters who's applying, what the applications are. I think that because this is their business, they certainly put forth a very good application, which I don't know how thorough our application process would be if we were doing it in-house. And I don't know if we could do it with existing staff. So
you're saying that we actually never did the NJ Division of Highway and Traffic Safety, the drunk driving enforcement one? We never did that, the village itself?
Where is that
That's
one?
Is that the gets over, get pulled over? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we do that.
Yeah,
we
so,
always do that.
Like I'm just saying, because that's one that's on
But
there.
this is probably, is it under other grants recommended? Because, yes.
So
that's
those
under-
other grants recommend
And so that's the
opportunities.
ones we tell them, we apply for those on our own. So in other words, they come and they give us all these different grant opportunities. Every time they come with a community development block grant for us, they tell us about the open space, they tell us but we tell them, remember, we do that on our own, and they say, yeah, that's right. But, they're always willing to help if we want help, but we really don't need it.
So our existing list is pretty extensive then. Right.
Well, again, it's the open space, historic preservation,
Right,
community
I see
development.
the historic. Okay.
It's all of those. It's these
Understood.
other ones, like the ones through firehouse subs, for example.
Right,
They have
right.
equipment grants. We would never have known about that. We wouldn't have known about the NJDCA ROID. The NJDEP pays to plug in. Healthy aging in parks, we wouldn't have known about. But again, it's just, I think it's worthwhile, but, you're the ones who are funding it, so if you don't think so, then we can.
So on the ones outstanding, because there are many of those that say they would be, we would know by.
Right, I can check to see if they've gotten
so
any
I think that
definitive-
in fairness to us, it may be, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Or was it just 4, or I thought there was another one?
No, there's a few that are in September.
The date passed.
Right.
So,
Yeah, some aren't until January, some are in September.
But those are big, those are big amounts of money. Sure,
Yeah.
if we got the $487,000, we'd all be like, yeah, just keep going with the contract. Keep paying them the 20.
I would hope so.
Then we'll do it.
I do appreciate the fact that they're willing to take that reduction. I think understanding the fact that, the grant opportunities haven't come in as we had expected, but,
Right, but they took that reduction, we did that last year, right?
The second
Didn't we
reduction,
did that
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right, but they're willing to hold it at that, because it was kind of a 1 year. Last year, they had one of
36
the
or
grant
30.
writers working with us, and he wasn't as proactive as he could have been, and so that was a part of the reasoning behind them reducing the price as well.
Right.
But they're willing to hold that price, so.
Yeah, I think we have to see, the document is
Okay.
dated October 10th,
Mhm.
and so, but those are still listed.
Well, let me find out
Or some
about
from
the September ones, and I
Okay.
can bring it
Good.
back.
And then we can decide, okay.
Okay, and then we can make a decision. The next item is declaring multiple vehicles surplus. The Signal Division, their vehicle is actually rusted through, and so that's the main reason. The Streets Division vehicle, I have a long list of issues with it. Basically, parts are no longer made for the units. The leach body runs for about 10 to 15 minutes and then completely shuts down. The seals are dry rotted. The handle on the back of the truck has snapped off the unit. The lights are no longer functional, so a LED-type warning system will cost about $400 a piece. The truck itself also no longer properly functions. There's an issue with the charging system, so the batteries die a lot sooner than they should. The dashboard of the vehicle is cracked and falling apart, and a piece of the dash will bounce off and into the operator's lap at times. So they're just going to be declared surplus because they're not roadworthy anymore. Under policy, we have revising a parking ordinance in the Hawes School area. Officer Ray Torino has working extensively with representatives of the Hawes School to improve the safety of children going to the school. The proposed ordinance seeks to provide an enforcement mechanism to clear some of the traffic bottlenecks that are occurring during the morning inflow and afternoon outflow of children. It's also a concern because with cars parked on both sides, it narrows the roadway. And there's a question as to whether or not emergency vehicles will be able to get in there. So basically what it's going to do is prohibit parking 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 2:30 to 3:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, September through June, on South Pleasant Avenue East, South Pleasant Avenue West, and Stevens Avenue West. And this should free up those bottlenecks because we won't have as much parking on the streets.
So this is kind of like an amazing, I had to actually do a map to understand what exactly was going on here. But this actually had caught my attention because going back a number of years ago, when we were addressing this same issue on, is it? No, it's on Corona.
Corona.
So I remember the folks from Corona coming here and saying that the teachers were parking. It was the teachers parking in the morning,
Right.
and that when the parking hours were changed, that the spillage went to them, and so they wound up with the cars there all day long,
Right.
because that's where the teachers are parking. When they did the expansion on Hawes, they did not leave sufficient parking for staff. So my question then is, if these cars that are parked there during the day, if they're parked there in the morning, there's a good chance that those are teachers parked there, right?
It's possible.
Because there's only one street here, and I guess the one part of it is being modified over by close to Dorchester. So
Correct.
I guess the question is, then I agree.
Are we just shifting it is what you're
It's
asking?
a mess. Well, all the teachers that are parking in the street are going now to shift to other streets, and then we're going to have similar complaints that we got from the folks on Corona because they got, I'm sorry. Corella, thank you. It was a Corona. That's on the other side. Yeah, I knew, I actually kept seeing Corona in my mind. I kept seeing it over by you, and it's Corolla, right? Anyway, so I'm just wondering, that's going to be, it has to be cleaned up. It's a problem.
Let me contact the principal at that school and find
Yeah.
out where the teachers park, and
Right.
we can go from there.
And even have, maybe in the interim, have the police go and monitor and see if the cars that are parked there at 8 a.m.
Right.
are still parked there at 2 o'clock p.m.
Right.
Because then I think that will give us the answer. I mean, if the same cars are parked there, just monitor it for a week.
Right. Okay, we'll take a look. All right, the next item is restriction on vaping due to the illnesses and the deaths that have occurred in New Jersey as well as throughout the country. So what you have is, we have had actually one case of a Ridgewood resident who was in his mid-30s who was ill and since recovered from vaping. 38 other cases were under investigation in Bergen County, and this was in mid-October. If you look at the news, almost every day there are more people who are dying from vaping-related issues. So currently what we do is we restrict the sale of vape electronic cigarettes to those over 21. and we charge a $1,200 annual fee to sell in the village. Some municipalities, such as Washington Township, have prohibited vaping devices, products, or vaping paraphernalia in any store in Washington Township. So, I don't know how you want to proceed. I know New York State obviously has prohibited the flavored ones, right? So I didn't know, how you wanted to proceed, but certainly Dawn Citrullo, our health director, is concerned, with this, and so it's up for discussion.
Because initially, that was the initial reports were coming in about the flavored ones, and there were the concerns there because the flavored ones, the way that they're packaged and marketed, are targeting younger users. But now there's also been reports on the ones that are not flavored, that are just pure nicotine for those that are, trying to quit smoking and so on. I just don't see any good reason to keep these things anywhere near, young users or older ones. I just don't see any need to keep those on the shelves.
They're not federally approved, right? There's no Federal Drug Administration.
There's no regulation on what goes in them. That's the problem.
And they've never been approved.
Right.
So, I don't, if they would require, how are they even being sold if they haven't received any kind of approval?
It's like a lot of other products, I think, that go out there that just never had to comply with FDA regulations.
FDA,
but
right.
The issue is that more and more information that's coming in is indicating the impact and the aspects of this that are detrimental to particularly everyone's health who uses them, but particularly to children, because the numbers in the schools are increasing all the time with regard to the kids that are using them. I think you run, and right now we have a few stores grandfathered that have sold it, but we restrict the sale of any e-cigarettes over to the, we looked at a number of different areas and distances from schools, residential areas and the like, and there's one place in town where it is a permitted use, which is over on along Route 17 in that corridor where the strip mall is between Paramus Road and Linwood Avenue. And just on that, what I'll call the western side of Route 17 South.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got to watch this very closely, because I think if we were to take a position where it can't be sold at all in town, in the village, that we would run into a constitutional aspect of it that might get litigated and might be a problem. I think one of the things that we should maybe ask Dawn, and keep talking about this, but ask Dawn which stores are grandfathered right now. I think Stop and Shop might be, and I'm not sure if there's another location in the central business district that might be. But we ought to find out, and just find out what we're up against in terms of just how far we're going to be able to go. I think Washington Township, who took that next step, and if you read GASP's take on the whatchamacallit, on the New Jersey Smoke-Free Air Act, GASP says you can go further than what the state law does, but that usually isn't the case. So
can we find out what the sales are in this area? I mean, if there are some...
I don't know how we're going to find out what the sales are, Jeff.
Well, they must have records at the places where they sell.
You're going to subpoena that from the private company? I mean, I don't know how we would find that out.
You just ask them, see if they'll give it to you. If they don't, okay.
I'm not going to do it. I mean, somebody else maybe can do it, but I'm not going to do it.
So, Matt, is there any better protection? You're saying if there's going to be any challenges legally, if it's a moratorium on the sales as opposed to an outright ban? Because I think there's a lot of stuff now where, FDA hasn't really set the standards for any of this stuff. I think now the federal government's looking at this enough where they're kind of pushing to see if they can find a way to regulate this better. Does that protect us at all?
I think we could first of all take a shot at regulating and precluding the sale of the flavored ones. But now there's additional data now with regard to, as you pointed out, with regard to just the non-flavored ones. Right. So, until that comes through, I think we might be, I don't know about I'd have to check into a moratorium and see if there's anything on the radar with that. I still think you run afoul of some constitutional issues with regard to, the interstate commerce clause and that we'd have to worry about. So,
So how is it okay to ban plastic bags? I'm confused, because I actually thought that was a violation of the Commerce Clause, so I don't understand. If that's an enterprise, that's a business, and in some instances, maybe people sell 5 cents for the plastic bag to put your groceries in. If you can ban plastic bags, if you can ban one, how could you not ban the other?
I do think that they're different issues because you're banning the use of them. You're not banning necessarily the sale. I don't think we went to the sale aspect. We're talking about the use of plastic bags. I think this is a sellable product that people have already have in commerce, and I think the restrictions got to be under health and safety. And I can certainly check them to see if we can go so far as to get a moratorium on it. But I certainly think we can take action with regard to the flavored ones.
So if Stop and Shop were selling the plastic bags for a penny a piece, just asking, I'm just a challenge question. So if Stop and Shop were selling the plastic bags for a penny a piece to put your groceries in, that what you're suggesting is then we could not ban them?
I think if they started to sell them, I think that would be against our ordinance because we say you can't use, our efforts in our ordinance are to say that you can't use those plastic bags.
Should we tighten up the ordinance or include
put
the
them in the
sale?
line of commerce would be against them.
But it does say that you can, police can charge for the plastic bags if they wish to do so. We didn't set the charge, but in the ordinance, it does say, that's only paper?
Paper,
Not
yeah.
plastic?
Paper.
Okay.
So all I'm saying is, I guess I don't really process how one can be okay to be banned because that's still a business, it's still a commerce. Stop and Shop pays for those plastic bags, everybody pays for them. So in other words, what you're suggesting is that
We're banning the use of the plastic bags. We're not banning the sale of the plastic bags here. We want to ban the sale of e-cigarettes, which is different than just the use. So there is it's certainly different in terms of the way I think it would be approached from a constitutional standpoint.
I guess we'll find out, but I mean, to your point, I think it's important to at least look at if we can do it for the flavor ones, because I think the younger users are very vulnerable to the marketing, to the packaging tactics.
We have another work session before our next public meeting. I can certainly report back next 2 weeks with regard to information on that and how far I think we can go.
because I'd be in favor of banning. I mean, one is harmful to the health, to
Right.
somebody's health. That I think is
Some people
more
are dying from that.
people, yeah, and
More so than environment. Yeah,
Right.
no, I'll report back in that time.
Yeah, and I think what Matt's saying too, because the grocery stores and everybody uses plastic bags aren't selling them, they're just using them. So this might be different because this is an actual product. So the plastic bags aren't a product, it's just a way that the stores...
Getting a profit from the distribution of it.
Right, yeah, they don't make a profit off the bags, they just kind of have them and hand them out to customers. And this is completely different.
But that's why I said if they were selling the bags for a penny, that would then create...
Oh, it would be different.
That
I
would
just
be
said-
different. That's
no,
why
I'm saying that
right.
would be very similar if they
Right.
were selling them. If
Right.
they're not selling
Understood.
them, don't ban it.
So Matt, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
An observation that I'll make, I was in a conference in Manhattan 2 weeks ago, and I drove in early, so it was like 6:30 in the morning, and, traffic doesn't move very fast, so it's in Manhattan, and I saw people walking by, and everyone had e-cigarettes. Like, I was shocked at the amount of people walking on the side of the street at 6:30 in the morning puffing on an e-cigarette. So,
They're still legalized, I mean.
yeah, I know. So how is this any different than a cigarette? Or this proposed, I guess, is it an ordinance that they're proposing, or how is it any different than smoking
and that's
a cigarette?
why I think Washington Township would probably run into a problem if somebody wanted to challenge
Yeah.
it. If they did adopt an ordinance that restricted the sale of it within their
Yeah.
borders. So
Yeah, I don't know how you.
I don't know how you go that far. I'm going to try and find out. But they're still being sold throughout the country, throughout the world, and there's issues with the health. But based upon health and safety, we do have the ability to restrict it and regulate it. You know,
Yeah,
and
but the
certainly-
same thing is true. They've proven that cigarettes are, you know what I mean? So why
Right.
would we
Right,
ban
it's a good
cigarettes? So it really, I mean, for us.
And that's been the cry coming from a lot of the retailers with regard to the bans that have been placed on them in New York for the flavored ones and things
Yeah,
like
the
that.
flavored ones I can see.
Except
for
we're
the-
not seeing people just, like young people, just die from smoking a cigarette. I mean, they're not
Sure
just
they can.
dying.
If they have asthma, they can die from it.
But they've, you know,
Good point, I guess. Right. You know, just another question. You're talking about the Starbucks strip mall on 17 Southwest? Because I don't think anybody's selling that stuff there.
no, that's the only place where it's permitted
Oh,
by
no,
zoning.
okay, understood. Got it, okay.
The stop and puff.
Got it, okay.
All right.
So I'll report next.
Yeah,
in
on
2
the
weeks.
6th,
Yep.
right. Okay. So the next one is amend the zoning ordinances in the OB1 and OB2 zones. As you remember, the B1 zone was expanded to include instructional schools. We've had a request to include instructional schools to be a permitted use in both the OB1 and OB2 office building zones. They permit general office use right now in child care centers, but instructional schools are certainly more prevalent nowadays than offices because a lot of people work from home or they work remotely. So by expanding the permitted uses in these zones, it'll allow landlords to lease to additional types of tenants and convert non-income producing vacant space to rentable space. So.
So our OB1 and OB2 zones
Route 17, I
Route
think.
17,
yeah.
that's the only
Right.
place we have those two
Right.
zones, right? Okay.
That's right. And I think when we had looked at the zoning for B1 and B2, I think we just assumed that it was one commercial zone in town. I think that's where we kind of maybe fell through the cracks in terms of the instructional, the use for instructional, for schools and so on.
Yeah, I thought, for some reason, I thought years ago we changed one piece of instructional, but Matt, what is the difference between our OB1 and OB2? Do we know?
Off the top of my
your
head?
We should have looked that up.
No.
One's Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can certainly get back to you, but
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm okay with it, but I just think that we need to know what the difference is between.
OB2 is the son of Obi-Wan.
I can't even say it. Okay.
Okay. So are you in favor of it if you know what OB1 and OB2 is?
Yeah. I think we have to be realistic about the trends and what's happening. Look, when you have offices in Brambles Park Mall, it's a reality. There's a lot of vacant space that if we don't kind of get ahead of it.
and it really should be dealt with by the planning board.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there was a big difference between OB1 and.
Right, but I think it really should go over to the planning board for consideration.
And so do you want me to just send it to them?
Yeah.
I'll do that. Then I'll send it to them to look at. Okay. So our last item under policy is a discussion about resident tree planting, and I'll have Councilman Seaton speak about that.
Thank you. So this is an idea that came out of the tree nursery meeting. So, people have trees in their yards and on their properties, and seeds or seed pods fall off of them, and they end up growing. So you end up getting little whips in your yards, and some people have said they pull them out and throw them away, or they give them their friends or neighbors, and then they go plant them somewhere else. And, they're kind of doing this on, a small scale. The thought was that it wouldn't be like a year-long thing. It would be like collect these little whips that people pull out of their yards that they might want to donate. Volunteers it would be all volunteer effort. There is a state-certified arborist who has joined the committee, and he was at the last meeting. So to identify the whips and what kind they are would be pretty easy, because if people could say, well, this is the tree it came off of on my property, or the arborist could look at it and say, well, this is that kind of tree. And then there'd be like a one-day collection and then a one-day planting. And I guess, again, people could do this on their own, on their private property. So I think what they're looking for is permission to plant in the planting strip in their neighborhoods. So you'd still call, you'd have to call for markouts, and anybody could call for a markout. It's free. And I brought up the issue of, well, how would you protect them? And everybody felt that it would be unsightly to have like some sort of, chicken wire or like a construction fence or something around it. So I think what people would want to do is just make sure that there were no wires overhead if it was a bigger shade tree, and call for markouts, and then plant these little, maybe like 10 to 12-inch whips in the planting strip. I mean, so some of the issues I brought up is, they're so small that the deer are going to come by and eat them when they leaf out and kill them. People visiting might trample them if they don't see them. Landscapers might run over them and just, cut the grass and cut them down. So I'm not sure what the survival rate would be or how many people would even want to do it. But again, it was an idea that was posed to me, and I didn't see, in my mind, much of a difference between, residents doing that or like the Ridgewood Conservancy for Public Lands planting tulips. They plant tulips on village property and everything. You're really talking about, at the time, was the same volume of soil that you would have to dig up, because again, these aren't large. But, and again, I don't know what the survival rate would be, but it's a group of very passionate people who want to do something for, something to plant trees. And, the Shade Tree Commission has given away 3-year-old trees, and, I think we maybe had between 20 or 30 people on the day that we gave them away. So I wouldn't see this as being such a huge effort that, we would have a collection point and it would be mobbed by hundreds of people. But, again, it's what everybody would be looking for would be permission to plant in that strip. And, I didn't know if there was legal issues with it, or if there was, probably liability, and, engineering would probably have some issues with it. So there was a bunch of questions that were raised that I couldn't answer, so I figured I'd bring it here, kind of put it out there in the public, and just maybe get some answers to those questions and see what, our employees, everybody, the staff would, what people think about it.
Well, there are liability issues. The recent Supreme Court case going back about, several years, holds the municipality responsible for residential sidewalks, not commercial sidewalks. Mm-hmm. And even though the Tort Claims Act requires notice of a sidewalk slab being raised or whatever, and there's an engineering issue with regard to the rate, it doesn't really become a dangerous condition until it reaches about 1.5-inch differential between the sidewalk slabs. We are held responsible if there's any indication, and it becomes a jury question, if there's a tree nearby where the root could have raised it. So from that standpoint, there's got to be consideration as to just what kind of tree we might be putting, where's the strip going to be, and if it was considered the strip between the sidewalk and the curb in the residential areas, then we've got to have consideration for just what we're going to be dealing with.
So the one thing I noticed, Mike, and on my street, it appears that the street trees were never planted on my side of the circle. Were never planted in the strip. All of those street trees were set into the yards off the sidewalk. Yeah. And it actually, so I know there was a question about that, and I almost feel like maybe, and I'm not a tree person, everybody knows that, but maybe there's a different option to start to push those shade trees into the yards, even though,
I think that was looked at a few years back, where there was consideration as to whether or not to approach residential owners, property owners, and see if they wanted trees that just pretty much came up to where the street right-of-way ends. So we own, let's just say you have a common street with a sidewalk and then a little gap of grass and then the curb. Normally, the right-of-way that the town owns goes up to the edge of that sidewalk into the property. Right. So I think that was tried a while ago. There weren't a lot of takers on it, but that was something that was considered. I mean, I don't even know with your house if the right-of-way goes closer to the house than the sidewalk that might be there. So I don't know if that's the case.
I mean, were the sidewalks added after the fact on your street, maybe? Was there a little bit of...
I don't don't know.
Land taking?
It's one of the few historic streetscapes in the village of Ridgewood, so I really don't know. I don't remember.
So maybe
No,
they
so
added
actually, what I
sidewalks.
would say is that, I mean, the trees have since they died, and many have been removed, but just looking at it, I realized that those street trees were placed, I'm going to say, inside
The sidewalk.
rather than on the strip. And all of a sudden it hit me that's how they were all planted, because they're all set inside. And I actually think it looks nicer. It seems to have less impact on the sidewalk.
Probably does.
Yeah, it's not lifting up the sidewalks. It probably has a little more space for the roots to grow, and it actually has a nice look about it. So, I don't know. I'm just wondering if this can be organized, why does it really, I mean, it has minimal village involvement because the folks can kind of do it themselves too, right?
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it could be done on private property. I think the question was that people wanted to plant in the strip, so that's why I said I wasn't exactly sure how or if that would work. So I said I'd put it on the agenda and bring it here and
Yeah, if the
try and
strip
get an
is, if
answer.
the strip is that area in the right of way, and we're involved in the process, then yes, we do get an amount of liability. There is a concern for that.
Yeah, I spoke briefly to Chris Rudeshauser, and he just mentioned that we may need insurance from, for the planting of the trees there, because we're not doing it. We don't know, what's being planted. I realize you have an arborist, but still. And, he was concerned, with it being done by residents. Although it's, it will make a difference over years, obviously. He had some concerns too.
Right, well, again, I mean, I would question the survival rate. So say you get maybe even like 30 people who want to donate a whip that's basically about this big. So you'd be talking about putting something like that in the strip, and then, somebody could walk on it and break it, or, a dog could chew it, or a deer could eat it, or, a landscaper could mow it. I mean, there's a hundred different things that could happen. So that's what I say. I would question the survival rate of it. But I just didn't know if there was a way to do that.
I think that there's so much, focus on trees, and everyone's clamoring for more trees and so on, that I could see people wanting trees on their private property and say, hey, listen, if you have trees to give me, I'll take them. I know how much they cost. And it is a volunteer effort to kind of plant them for me, even cheaper. But, and I'm no gardener by any means, but I'm assuming there's a way that if you planted something that you would want in your yard, you could put something around it, whether it's some sort of lattice, something that would say, hey, this is not just a stick in the ground, this is, and I'm sure a landscaper would know to kind of mow around it. And
Right, and that would probably be easier if people did it inside the sidewalk.
Right.
So it wouldn't be the strip
Right.
necessarily, because I know what the deputy mayor is saying. Some streets you go and all the trees are planted in the strip, and you look down the street and they're all in the strip, and then some streets you go down to and they're all planted on the inside of the sidewalk on what would appear to be people's private property, but then it's actually the village right-of-way.
Until you call them and tell them this tree is dead.
Oh, it's your
Right,
problem.
well, yeah, that's when it gets dicey.
Right.
But
Sorry, Heather, it was just something that popped in my head. Anyway, so, yeah, I mean, I'm all for helping to organize and doing because November is tree planting, right? So it would be fabulous if everybody could kind of rally and take those little whips or little baby trees out of there, dig them up, and I don't know if the ground is even, you can dig in that cold
November,
weather.
it's not. In November, it's
And
not
transplant.
frozen or anything.
I mean, maybe it would be helpful to use if they wanted to organize something where they were actually just planting in yards, but kind of a tree exchange. Maybe we could help facilitate that by using village, maybe down by the recycling, maybe we could use the space where everybody could kind of gather, bring their trees, separate them, organize, and maybe then we could use village staff to help. But then folks they can plant them in their yards, and that removes that liability. No, is that a good idea?
Right, I mean, that would be, and it would be one day, it'd be like a one-day collection, and then, volunteers or, whoever could kind of sort out what's what, and then one day of getting everybody back together and going out and planting. So it wouldn't be something continual that would need continual staff time and monitoring and everything else. It'd just be kind of an event that happens twice.
Right.
And again, I don't know what the response would be, because, you know, we have a lot of events and different things that we do through the environmental committees, where you usually get like 20 people or so to show up. So I don't know if, you know, there'd be a mass push of people coming out, or if we would just get our regular 20 or so people who would come out. But it might be interesting to see.
Could be organized on social media. Could wind up like getting a lot of
If you
people.
promote it enough, I think people will buy into it.
I think it's kind of like, it could be like an exciting thing if everybody brings their trees, everything is organized, then you have one day where everybody goes and says, okay, pick your trees, and they do the tree exchange and they plant, and it's a big, like, a day of planting.
Yeah, something like that.
Ridgewood Tree Day or something. I think it could be fun. I would do that.
I'll give you a call.
You can be known as Michael Treeden.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
All right.
It's like Giddy appeared tonight or something. Right, what's
Just
next?
like
Moving on.
I couldn't even say it again. I couldn't.
All right,
Okay.
we're good. All right, we'll go to public comments, not to exceed 5 minutes per person. Hello
Good evening
again.
again, Saurabh Dani, 390 Bedford Road. I have a few comments. Now, the first one is the trees. So I could not attend the meeting downstairs when you discussed the trees with Nancy Vernon, because there was a Board of Ed meeting that day, and I was attending that. But when I was talking to her on Facebook about that, and when we talked downstairs at the visioning workshop, there is a huge price differential of $350 minimum right now if we have to get the village to put a tree in anybody's yard. But it does not have to be a small sapling. At a $50, $60, $100 range, you can get a nice tree at Home Depot or at any landscaping shop. So the idea was that the labor part can be done by the volunteers, and we can still buy those trees, or some residents may just donate those trees. Some residents may donate money for others to buy it, or some residents may pay that $50, $60 to buy a nice sized tree, and then we can do the labor part and install it, or put the tree and maybe put some cover around it to protect it. Where we need guidance is what type of trees can we plant, what do you consider as city trees that can be planted under wires, or what are allowed trees, and where can they be planted. So if the village does the markings, village approves that, okay, these are the approved locations, that these are 1,200 locations or 2,000 locations that village thinks that where we can plant trees, then we can do a volunteer effort to go and get those 2,000 trees, get the funding, get the right size trees and plant them. So we were hoping that we can do the volunteer part. So $350 from village and $50, $60 to buy a tree, and putting the labor is a big difference. So we are not just talking about completely free saplings, we are talking about buying the trees of nice sized trees. So where and what type of trees and where can be planted? That was the question. And on the garage price discussion, when you were discussing about the Walker report and that we have to raise the money, I remembered one of the coffee meetings 3.5 years ago at one of the residents' house who was sitting here, and one of the candidates at that time talked about the taxables, and once we build the garage, the taxables will go up. So I'm hoping, and one of the residents, when we make any changes in the house, our tax immediately goes up. My tax recently went up by $4,000 a year. So I'm hoping that the taxes will increase in the surrounding areas of Hudson Street Garage once we build the garage, because that was one of the big points from the then chamber president. There was a big newspaper article about that. There were candidates here who were for that idea that the tax base will increase. So I'm hoping that at least the surrounding area, the shops or businesses that are directly adjacent to Hudson Street Garage, will increase the taxes for them. And lastly, for the library, the auditorium dividing part, and then I heard about the library, not books, it's community center. I did not, when I met with the trustees and looked at the survey feedback, I did not get the community center idea. So I think that's one of the councilmen said about community center, I have not heard the community center idea. They want more teens and more other activities, but it's not the community center. So we are not asking library will be competing with the community center in the village hall. So those are two completely different things. And for the auditorium, I honestly think there should be some sort of shared calendaring or cross-resource utilization. So just because if library has 2 events going on, they need more space, there are 10 schools who have auditoriums, gyms, classrooms, and then there is this community center right across the street. So those events can happen anywhere within the village. All of those are paid by the property taxes. So we don't have to expand the space in one building. We can use other buildings that are available within the village.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Anybody else awake?
We'll close public comments. I do want to just to the last point that was made about the assessments. Now, that was always one of the things that when you looked at what has been done in other municipalities that has worked well in terms of assessments, you know, considering that we have the premier downtown in Bergen County, the contribution of the commercial properties in town hasn't really gone beyond 9-point-something% in Ridgewood as a percentage of the total. 1 year was higher. It was 1993 was a fluke. It was 10.01%. And if you look at Ridgewood and Morristown as two parallel, you know, compared side by side, 1985, both were facing the same, you know, kind of parking deficit. Morristown started building parking infrastructure. They built 3 pretty large garages. And if you looked at the price of commercial rents for both, they were about the same at the time, about $35 a square foot. Since then, because Morristown has built the parking, the assessments there have almost doubled, really, compared to Ridgewood. So it is maybe a longer-term benefit that accrues. I think you're going to see an immediate spike, I think, in it. So in a way, we're building something that's being financed through a parking utility, not on the backs of taxpayers, but the ultimate benefit accrues to the taxpayer. And it's really the only way that you're going to look at true property tax relief anywhere in the near future. But that was a good point. Thank you for that. And with that, we'll take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on October 23rd, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey, and be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to personnel matters to include boards and committees and legal matters to include the Hudson Street parking garage. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. Have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.